Welcome, dear English teachers. Welcome to today's webinar. I'm Mariela Condorena, as you already know. And we are so happy to have you here in this summer webinar series. Today we have a great presentation titled Speaking Every Time. But before that, we are going to remember some important things for you. And remember that you can follow us on Facebook. On Facebook, we have 24,000 members and 34,000 followers, and we are happy for that. You can follow us on WhatsApp too, on Telegram, YouTube, or TikTok. Please don't forget that. Follow us on our social network, dear English teachers. Now, we are going to remember some important instructions that you have to consider in order to participate in today's webinar. The first instruction is, please type your questions in the comment section. The answer to your questions and comments will be replied by our guest speaker at the end of the webinar in the question time section. Remember that, please. And when finishing the webinar, we will share a link for you to have access to the exit ticket, which will be available for 20 minutes. Okay, remember that you have to complete your exit ticket in order to register your attendance, please, English teachers. Okay, so pay attention, please, at the end of the webinar. But now we are going to know our guest speaker. And please, Miss Gina Soplocuco, can you introduce him, please?
Thank you, Miss Mariela. Good evening, dear colleagues. Now I'm going to introduce the speaker, Mr. Leonardo Mercado. He holds a master's degree in education with a specialization in curriculum and instruction from the University of Phoenix. He also holds an executive MBA with a specialization in project management from the New York Institute of Technology. His main interests include technology for the language classroom, language assessment, teacher education, and professional development, international accreditation, and ESL research. Originally from the Queens, New York, Leo has been in the educational field for more than 25 years. Over the years, he has led large-scale projects with Peru Ministry of Education and other public and private entities. As a speaker, he has presented in the United States, Canada, the United Kingdom, and most of Latin America, including TESOL International, EATL, ABLA, and others. He has a lot of international publications, including his latest titles, Supervision of Early Career Teachers in the TESOL Encyclopedia of English Language Teaching. He has also been certified as a language proficiency rater specialized by the Council of the Teaching of Foreign Language. Welcome, Mr. Leonardo Mercado. You can continue.
And thank you all for being here. I'd like to thank English teachers in Peru for having cordially invited me to be a part of this magnificent summer series of events. And I'm also very pleased and honored to be here with you today. So yeah, let's get to it. Let's share the presentation. Let's take a look. All right, so today we're going to be spending the next hour and a half or so talking about a topic that does not lose relevance over time, never loses relevance, and that's specifically how we can maximize student talking time, and essentially doing that by getting students to speak every time or every chance they get, and how we can create those opportunities for them. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I was asked to talk about something that would be of interest. And of course, we always want our students to speak. That hasn't changed with the dawn of the virtual age. We continue to do our very best to get our students to participate and speak up. And that's the same whether you're in a face-to-face or on-site class, or whether you are in a virtual class. So let's get to it, speaking every time. So we're going to talk about the foundations of student talking time, and it's important to look at the essence of the issue, how we can address that by understanding what leads to student talking time and what actually works against it, which we're going to discuss also as well, which is very important to keep in mind. And we're going to look at the application of these ideas and principles in the classroom. And then we'll have a little time at the very end to see how the field addresses the issue through standardized examinations for teachers. Okay. All right. So very good. Let's look at the foundations of maximizing student talking time. Now, we're in a classroom, whether we look at class time can be divided essentially into three key areas. We're looking at student talking time, we're looking at teacher talking time, and we're looking at time when students are working with teachers monitoring. So we can call the silent period or downtime. So that basically is how we can divide class time. A typical lesson will have these three characteristics at any particular time, right? And so the question is, how or to what extent does each one play a role in a lesson that we carry out? Okay, so my first question to you, they've done studies and they've analyzed how teachers and students interact in a typical lesson. They've done multiple studies over the years, and they've been able to gather all of that data and arrive at certain conclusions on average. When you look at a lot of different studies, it's called a meta-analysis. And so here, my question to you is, according to the research studies, what do you think is the average teacher talking time in class? Now, we've got four options: 30 to 40%, 50 to 60%, 70 to 80%, or 90 to 100%. Which one do you think is the average that they were able to find when going through all of these different studies on the topic of teacher talking time? I'll give you about a minute, take a look at it, contemplate it. Let's see, I can see through the YouTube live chat, we've got a lot of different choices, a lot of people going for number one. Actually, we have a little bit of everything. We've got number one, we've got number two, number three, a lot heavily leaning towards 1 and 3. Okay, good guesses. I mean, we're not, we don't really think about what the research has been able to find. So let's see what they can tell us. Actually, the percentage has been in the area of 70 to 80%. That's the average amount of teacher talking time. And that is a lot. That's quite a lot, especially when we want our students to speak. I mean, we don't need to practice any more English ourselves. I mean, we're the teachers, right? So we want our students to participate. So the average they were able to find by analyzing this collection of studies over the years is about 70 to 80%. So that leaves about 20 to 30% for students. So that's the average TTT-STT ratio, teacher talking time to student talking time ratio. And again, this meta-analysis was conducted by Hattie back in 2012. A lot of the studies that have come afterwards haven't really found anything significantly different, so the average tends to remain the same. So what we really want, we want to establish a peak student talking time, amount of student talking time that can reach as high as 80 to 90%. That's where we want to be. Now, we're not always going to be able to sustain a level of student talking time that high, because obviously the lesson has different components. We do different things during a lesson. So teacher talking time is going to increase during a lesson at various moments, but we do want to get to a point on several occasions, or as many occasions as we can, where student talking time can be as high as 80 or 90%. Okay, so that's where we want to be. It's good to have an idea of where we want to be, because then we can start working towards that goal. Reflection questions. So number one, if teacher talking time is so high, what makes it so high? We need to understand what is bringing about so much teacher talking time in a typical lesson. And better yet, once we know the cause or the causes, what can we do about it? What can we do about the fact that we talk so much? All right. Number one, we have to understand teacher dispositions. We have to, in other words, what is going on through our minds, right? And specifically common assumptions that we have as teachers. Number one, there's this almost irresistible urge that we have to demonstrate that we are knowledgeable about the English language, and that we're knowledgeable about what we're teaching overall. And this has to be demonstrated because we are the teachers, right? So it's almost irresistible. It's something that we have to overcome, because wanting to demonstrate we know so much makes us talk more than we need to. That's number one. Number two, another common assumption is, for example, when we're teaching grammar, we need to take a long time to teach it. And as we're doing that, we have to do a lot of explaining. Otherwise, students won't get it. That's another common assumption. An erroneous one is really not correct. We don't have to take that long to teach grammar, but that's something that works against us and makes us talk more than we need to. Sometimes we underestimate students. Sometimes we don't believe that students can really perform at a high rate where they can actually elaborate a lot of language. They can produce a lot of language. And so by underestimating our students, we don't create the opportunities we should be creating. And that works against student talking time and then creates more teacher talking time again. And of course, another thing is, this idea that we don't really bring about, let's see, who's that? Good evening. Somebody said good evening. As Giovanna said, good evening. Good evening, Giovanna. Okay. All right. Good evening, CD, Salcedo, and all of you, dear teachers. Thank you for the greetings. And so we don't have a systematic approach to maximizing participation. We have a class of 10, we have a class of 15, 20, 30 students in the class. How do we ensure that everybody participates by speaking up? We have to have an approach. We have to have a plan, right? So that's something also that can be lacking, and that works against the student talking time. Number two, teacher awareness. So the problem sometimes is we're not aware of the fact we talk so much. All right. I mean, somebody might ask us, whether we're with a coordinator or maybe with a peer, and, the topic comes up and, you think you're not talking that much. That means we're not aware of it. We've probably never seen ourselves teach, or we've seen small segments of our classes, and we haven't really been able to self-assess in a very comprehensive way. So we're not really aware of the fact it doesn't hit us. Hey, do I really talk that much? Do I say as much as apparently I do? Well, it's hard to know if you don't watch yourself, if you don't listen to yourself. So that's one thing. And second, there are a lot of habits and customs that we stick to that can generate more TTT, more teacher talking time, that can work against the student talking time. Yeah. Self-control. We're going to watch some classes, we're going to watch some videos, and then, there are some things that we just can't resist, right? And sometimes you need to kind of put your hand over your mouth and, almost to keep yourself from saying more than you need to, right? And so that's self-control, right? Being disciplined. Hey, it's not my turn to talk. Let my students talk. So this is something else. And finally, the little or no feedback. Do we get feedback that can help us, again, identify what makes us speak more than we need to, what generates all of this non-productive teacher talking time, right? And work more on generating more student talking time. Okay, so let's watch a class. I want you to this is going to be brief. I'd like you to think about two things. Number one, how high is the TTT level or teacher talking time level? And why is that? Why is it? Okay, whatever it is, whatever you get to see, establish how much teacher talking time there is, and then why do you think it's there? Okay, let's watch this brief video. Here we go.
Which means that they're for the. We are going to talk.
Excusez-moi, I did not activate the share computer sound. Now it is. So let's watch the video, okay? Here we go.
We are going to talk about digits today. Has anybody ever heard of the word digits? So digits are numbers, and we have numbers. Numbers might be one digit, which means that they're for the ones. They might have two digits, which means tens, or three digits, which means they're hundreds. So can anybody give me an example of a two-digit number? 17 would be an example of a two-digit number, or 23, or 44. 81, good. Can anyone give me an example of a three-digit number?
Three-digit number.
Yeah, so 142, yeah.
123.
Yeah, 123, 571. Those would be examples of three-digit numbers. So remember, one-digit numbers are for the ones, two-digit numbers are for the tens, and three-digit numbers are for the hundreds. Does everyone understand?
Yes.
Okay. I think we have a problem here. I don't doubt that she's a very nice lady, and she believes that she is doing her best to help her students. But we have a problem, and it's a problem with teacher talking time. Now, I'd like you to tell me what was the problem with this class. Now, it might be more than one possibility here. We have four options. Number one, teacher didn't have rapport with the students. Number two, students were at the wrong level, course or language level. Number three, teacher did not allow enough wait time. And number four, teacher answered her own questions. Now remember, it could be more than one of these. So what do you think? Is it one, number two, number three, number four? What do you think? I'd like to see. Okay, we're getting some answers. A lot of people putting number four, couple number threes, 3 and 4. Okay, so that's Yenny thinks it's 3 and 4. Flor, okay, Maribel 4. Eliana, Mamani 3. Eliana, Mamani, there you go. And Magali Mitak, okay, 3 and 4. I recognize some of these names. All right, thank you for joining us tonight. All right, let's see. Okay, so most of you seem to believe it's 3 and 4, or 3 or 4. The correct answer mainly is teacher did not allow enough time, wait time, okay? And the teacher did answer her own questions. So a lot of times, that's the problem. We end up answering our own questions because we don't allow enough what is called wait time, okay? And wait time is the moment between, or the amount of time between the moment you finish asking the question and the moment the student begins to answer, or if they ever get there. That's the problem when you don't have enough wait time. So that's when you don't give students enough time to think and respond, you end up answering your own questions, okay? They did a study at the University of Columbia in New York, namely at the English Language Center. And they assessed 26 teachers. They observed 26 teachers of English as a second language, and they were able to determine what was the average wait time, for these teachers. So what do you think it was? Do you think it was more than 20 seconds or less than 20 seconds? Let's see what you can tell me. All right, let's see. Less than 20 seconds, less than 20 seconds. Everybody's saying less than 20 seconds. Yeah, so actually, it was 1.5 seconds. So if you're only giving your students 1.5 seconds, and then you're talking yourself, of course they're not going to speak, right? I mean, it's common sense. They're not going to speak. So 1.5 seconds, 26 teachers at the University of Columbia. This was shared with me and many teachers at one of my former institutions when I invited him. His name is Dr. Robert O'Prandy, a good friend from the University of Columbia, and then he went over to San Francisco, and he wrote many books and everything, and that's something he shared with us. It's a fascinating statistic. 1.5 seconds. Obviously, if you don't give your students enough time to speak, they're not going to speak, right? Okay. Now, it's also because we asked the wrong questions, or the wrong types of questions, okay? So let's look at these questions here. We have 9 options: A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, and I. Now, which questions would you like, because you think it's going to get your students to speak a little more? There are 4 here that you can choose. Which questions do you think generate student talking time better? I'll give you about 30 seconds. You can put down your answers. What do you think? Okay, let's take a look. All right, so actually I highlighted 5. There are 4 main ones, and they would be, there we go. We got B, we've got A, we've got, let's see what we got here. I need my glasses. Put on my glasses over here. There we go. Oh, there we go. Oh, wow, that makes a big difference. Okay, so we got Margarita, we got everybody. Carlos Ronquillo, we got Monica Condori, we have Tatiana Chacon. Everybody's B, D. Okay, B, D. All right, good, correct. Everybody's getting okay. Very good. So the first one would be, can you tell me about a restaurant you would recommend and why? So somebody's going to talk to you about a restaurant because they like it. They've had an experience there, and they'll be able to tell you a lot of things about it. And the question here is why? Why would you recommend a restaurant? Give me a reason, or give me various reasons. So that encourages students to speak up. Letter D, tell me 3 things about the celebrity that you chose. You're automatically pushing the student to say more than one thing. Tell me 3 things about the celebrity that you chose. G, explain the recipe. And we know that recipes are a series of instructions with verbs and such. And so we want students to speak up a lot. So you need to explain a recipe. A recipe can't be stated in 1 or 2 sentences. You have to do a lot of explaining. And then H, could you read the story and summarize it in 4 or 5 lines? So again, when you are kind of directing the student to produce more language, it's implicit that they can't just say a few words, or they can't say 1 sentence. They have to give us a description. They have to give us a summary of the story. All right, hopefully they'll give us more. Now, A is an A-B question. Normally, that kind of a question doesn't work because they can say, you know, if the question is which is better, Alianza Lima or Universitario de Deportes, you can say Alianza Lima. Now, that's just an example. Or you can say Universitario de Deportes, or you can say Melgar, or you can say Cienciano, etc. Or you can say Sporting Cristal. I don't want to offend anybody out there. Okay? All right. So, okay. Get these ads on YouTube is driving me up the wall. Okay, anyway. So Alianza Lima, it's passion, right? I mean, how you feel about a particular team. So that will help you generate, or your students generate a lot of language. So question types, you know, we don't want yes, no questions. We want open-ended questions, explanations, summaries, descriptions, opinions, examples. These are the kinds of responses we want our students to give. And so we have to ask the right questions, the kinds of questions that will get our students to produce that language, okay? Now, this is something I created quite some time ago. It's called the max output taxonomy. And this is just one of several pages of it. And so here, for example, you want your students to give a response. You want your students to give examples. You want your students to give explanations, summarizing, paraphrasing, reporting. So if they're giving an example, you know, main idea from the student, in my country, people start to date when they are 15 or 16. They usually go to many places. They can go to the movies or a restaurant. The example from the same student, in my city, you can take a girlfriend or a boyfriend or whatever to the Pacifico movie theater on Diagonal in Miraflores. It has good food or good movies and food. Or if it's in Iquitos, you can go to the river, right? There's that Hielo y Fuego, I think that's the name of the restaurant in Iquitos on the river, whatever it is. So you want the students to elaborate, to give it responses that, you know, generate a lot of language. We have to train our students. It's not something that's going to come magically, but we want our students to be able to tell us, right? All right, good. So awareness, as I said before, most of the time we're not aware of our behaviors and dispositions, which lead to high TTT. The only way we can become aware is through self-assessment and peer observation, okay? So peer observation and self-assessment will help us see or notice the things that we do in class that we weren't aware of. And then we can work on those areas and improve. So self-observation, you can video record yourself. You can audio record yourself with your cell phone. Actually, you can do both with your cell phone, technically. All you need is a stand, right? And or a tripod. Or you can just lay the cell phone on the desk, and as you're teaching, listen to, you know, record it for 5-minute segments and listen to yourself. Okay. And with a peer, you can work with a peer, and then you can agree on what you want to focus on. Your peer will observe you in a non-evaluative way, in a more formative way, and give you the feedback that you need to hear in terms of what your peer thinks is leading to your TTT or excessive TTT. Okay. Okay. Oh, I'm going the wrong way. Sorry. We want to go forward, not backward. Now, this is something, for example, this is an instrument that that you can get from one of our courses. This is from actually from Caprica Education in the U.S. It's our courses because we sell them, we offer them here to teachers, and it's part of our ELT PAC program. Okay, so here this gives instructions on how you can monitor yourself in terms of your TTT and how you can generate more STT. It actually has tools for building STT in your classroom. Okay. Number 3, student dispositions. Student dispositions. This is when the issue arises with students. Now, the number one reason students don't participate, what do you think that is? What do you think that is? So let's see what you think. Let me take a look and see what you guys are coming up with. Let me put on my glasses because I do need my glasses to read. Okay. We see some nice teachers here. We got a lot of teachers here tonight. We got about 800 so far. All right. Thank you, Jesus. Jesus Carrasco. Really interesting, the material you're showing. Thank you, Jesus. And we're just getting started here. Okay, we're going to be together for a while. All right, so here we go. Let's see. Don't worry, David. David is wondering, okay, how he can enroll in one of these programs. Don't worry, we're going to talk about that at the end, okay? Okay, so the number one reason, there we go. We got Marcos Enrique Victor Delgado, lack of confidence and less motivation. Student Elizabeth says, student disposition is important. Carolina Medina, fear to fail. Catherine Paucar, shy students, fear. Shy students, Elizabeth Cabanillas. Gabriela Favela, shy. Let's see, what's this here? It says, they feel afraid to make mistakes. That's Irma, is moving so fast. Celis, okay. Blanca Ruby, okay. All, yeah, everybody's agreeing. Fear. That's what, they don't want to make mistakes. You know, and that happens more with teenagers and adults, but mainly adults, but also teenagers, kids to a lesser extent, because there's a word that describes it. When we're self-conscious, we're afraid of what people will think of us, what they're going to say if we make a mistake, if we look foolish. That's the main reason students don't participate in a class. We have to deal with it. If we want to bring out this desire to speak, to lose the fear. So we need to talk to our students. We need to make sure they understand, hey, listen, you know what? Nobody expects you to be perfect. This is not the 1970s and the 1980s when they were using the audiolingual method and they expected you to be perfect, and there was a lot of drilling and a lot of error correction and so on. Nowadays, we know that second language acquisition takes time, and that the language that we acquire at first is rough in form, rudimentary, and then it becomes finer and finer as we practice and we are exposed to it more. And eventually we become very fluent and we use it very accurately. Fluency and accuracy come together over time. Okay. So we have to talk to our students. They have to understand that's the process. That's how it works. Mistakes are natural. Make expectations clear from the beginning. What do you expect? Hey, listen, I just want you to be able to make yourself understood. I want you to speak as much as you can, not to worry about it. Just get your ideas out. I want to hear what you have to say. I want to hear how you feel, how much you like the topic or whatever it is. So make your expectations clear. Optimize your feedback. Don't be rough, you know. So negative feedback is constructive feedback or corrective feedback, but make sure that you give feedback in a way that gently helps your students become aware of their mistakes, and if possible, help them self-correct. Don't correct them directly. That's the old-fashioned, old traditional way, which can be a little intimidating, a little frustrating, a little scary, depending on who the teacher is. You know, I've worked with thousands of teachers over the years, and I remember one or two over there were pretty scary to students because of the way they corrected the students. Okay. And then create conditions for, this is very important. This is probably the most important thing on the list. You know, you need to create the conditions for success. You have to do everything possible to help your students succeed. If your students succeed, they will lose their fear. If they succeed time and time again, they will lose their fear. They will not be afraid. They will participate more. If they understand you do not expect perfection, they will participate more. If you give them opportunities, they will participate more. If you give feedback the right way, they will participate more. They will understand. If you give positive feedback, okay, reward them for what they do correctly, yeah, then of course they will respond in a positive manner. So somebody, let me see who's asking. Stephanie Noah, what would be a good example of feedback? So feedback, there are two types of feedback, positive and negative. Positive is when it's reinforcing. Positive is you say, hey, Stephanie, good job. Hey, I love the way you say that. Say a little more. We want to learn more about your family. Fantastic. Good job, Stephanie. There you go, Stephanie. It feels good. She's like, wow, look at that, teacher. Look at that. That's great. Hey, I did, you know, what I thought I had to speak perfectly. I didn't have to speak perfectly. I got my ideas out. Hey, the teacher, you like what I had to say? I'm going to speak again, right? That's positive feedback. When you say, hey, let's see, who else we got over here? Percy. We got Percy Trigoso. Hey, Percy. Hey, tell us again. Some of the students came in late. Well, tell us again about what you did over the weekend. And so he tells us, hey, I'm showing interest in what Percy had to say. I like what Percy had to say. Percy talked about how he went out with his friends to Siete Sopas. They went to Saturday evening. They went to Siete Sopas. They had some good food, had a good time. Good, Percy. Thank you for sharing that. Now, you see, I gave him importance. I attributed to him importance that I wanted everybody to hear about his weekend. So that's positive. Now, negative feedback is constructive feedback. It's corrective feedback. And so we say, for example, that Beatriz, she normally doesn't make mistakes. So Beatriz, don't worry. I'm not saying you make mistakes. But imagine Beatriz. She's in our class, and she makes a slight mistake. Beatriz, you go to the movie theater on Saturday? You go? So Beatriz is like, wait a minute, why is he going? You go? What's wrong with the teacher? Oh, wait a minute. Did I say go? Oh, man. Sorry, teacher. I went to the movie. Oh, yeah, you went. Oh, great. Tell me more. So that's gentle, indirect, implicit feedback that helps the student become aware of the mistake that she or he made, and that the student can self-correct. You don't correct it. The student can self-correct. The student feels better. Okay, so anyway, good question. Keep on going back. Sorry, guys. I mean, I could be here all night, but I know you don't have all the time in the world. So let's look at classroom application. Okay, so those are the perceptions and thoughts and dispositions on the part of the teacher and the part of the students. Let's look at the instructional or the teaching factors. Now, there are 4 areas I want to address today. I could talk for a week on maximizing student talk time. We don't have a week. We have an hour and a half. So I want to focus on 4 areas here. Number 1, scaffolding preparation. Number 2, appropriate content. Number 3, strategies and techniques. Number 4, identifying opportunities. Okay. So these are the 4 areas we're going to address. Let's start with number 1, scaffolding and preparation. Now I lost my picture. I think I lost my picture. I don't see it. Let me see if you guys can see it. Yeah, I don't know why that happens. Every now and then you put a picture in here and you were supposed to see a scaffold. So scaffolding means we're helping the students. Okay, we're helping the students in one or more ways. Okay, so when we're going to watch another class, I want you to look for 2 things. What was the aim or the objective? And was the class successful? So number 1, I want you to think about the objective. And number 2, I want you to tell me if the class was successful. Now, this is a class that now don't get me wrong. I like the guy, I like the class, I like the students, I like everybody. He tried really hard, okay? So I wanted to say that out front. So I found this on the internet. It's an interesting class because it's a class that has to do with a certain approach. We don't see that very often. But anyway, I won't say any more. Let's watch the video, okay? Here we go. All right, so remember, what is the objective? And was this class successful?
Okay, good morning, guys. How are you today? Fine? Good? Very good. So, today we are going to see the body parts, the parts of the body. Okay? The body, this is the body. We are going to separate the body in four parts. Okay? This part, that is the head. Okay? This is the head. Here, repeat. This is the head. This is the head. This is the head. Let's go to the torso. This is the torso. This is the torso. This is the leg. This is the leg. The leg. This is the arm. This is the arm. Okay? Now we are going to see the parts. Okay, the parts. In the head, we have the hair. Repeat, hair. Hair. This is the hair. This is the hair. These are eyebrows. 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 This is the eye. This is the eye. These are the cheeks. These are the cheeks. This is the chin. This is the chin. This is the mouth. This is the mouth. This is the ear. This is the ear. This is the forehead. This is the forehead. Okay, very good. Now let's go to the torso. Okay, this is the stomach. This is the stomach. This is the chest. This is the chest. Okay, and this is the back. This is the back. And this is the neck. This is the neck. Okay, very good. Let's go to the arm. Okay, the arm. This is the arm. This is the arm. This is the elbow. This is the elbow. This is the hand. This is the hand. These are fingers. These are fingers. This is the thumb. This is the thumb. 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 Remember, like number 3? Thumb. Thumb. Very good. Good pronunciation. Okay, let's go to the leg. Okay, the leg. This is the leg. This is the leg. This is the foot. This is the foot. In the toes are the fingers from the toe, but in the feet. Okay? This is the toe. This is the toe. This is the knee. This is the knee. Okay, this is the foot. This is the foot. And 2 foot, those are feet. Plural is feet. Okay? Foot, 1, 2 feet. 1 foot, 2 feet. Okay? Okay. Foot and feet. No, the 2. Okay? Oh. Okay. Do you have questions? No questions? No? Okay. Please come here. Come here. Do you remember how to do this? This is the head. Okay, very good. What do you find? 3 things in the head. 3 parts in the head. This is the eye. Okay. This is the chin. Okay. Let's turn. Okay. Now show, what is the chin? Chin. Show your chin. This is the chin. This is the eye. Okay, very good. Now just please. Show me your arm. Which is your arm? Yep. Arm. Okay? Your arm. Okay? Your arm. Okay? Show me your hand. Your hand. This is hand. Very good. This is the hand. What is this? Finger. This is fingers. Complete. This is very good. What about this? You remember? Elbow. No? This is the elbow. Very good. Okay, thank you very much for your time. Now please, you're going to copy that and we finish. Okay? Very good. Thank you very much.
All right. So what was the objective? The objective was to have students identify parts of the body by pointing at and naming them, using demonstratives and appropriate vocabulary. That was the objective. So students needed to learn or needed to identify the different parts of the body, the hand, the chin, the nose, the eyebrow, the hair, what have you, okay? The legs or the feet, and using demonstratives and appropriate vocabulary. Now, before I continue, something I need to clarify because I can see it. The teacher made a mistake in how we refer to parts of the body. When you're thinking about anatomy, you should say parts of the body. Don't say body parts, because if you say body parts, that has a very negative connotation. Body parts is when you, how do I say this without being a little gruesome, is when, you know, somebody gets dissected, okay? That's body parts. You know, don't say body parts, say parts of the body. When we're talking about the anatomy, the human anatomy, say parts of the body, not body parts. Okay, here we go. So, was the class successful? Was the class successful? Yes or no? Simple yes or no, or partially maybe. If you want to say partially, that's another option. Yeah. Let's see what you guys have to say. Let's take a look. Okay, Miss Gianni says it wasn't successful. Okay, Carla Karina Manchego, a little more dynamic. And I know Ramon Lawrence said it needed a little more dynamic. A lot of people saying no, it wasn't successful. Yeah, okay. Yeah, most of you saying no, a couple of the so-sos, but most of you saying no. Unfortunately, you know, this guy's very nice. He's a nice guy. You know, let's give him some credit. You know, he has nice rapport with his students. His students like him. He's a hardworking guy. He put some time into preparing his lesson. He had good intentions. He has good pronunciation. You know, he had the right idea, but the execution didn't come out that well. So the answer is no. And so my question to you is, what was the problem? If the class wasn't successful, what was the problem? So we have four options. Number one, the teacher didn't have rapport with the students. Number two, the students did not have prerequisite knowledge. Three, the students did not have enough exposure. Or number four, the students did not like the content. Now, it can be more than one, like we've seen before. It can be option number one, number two, three, four, or any combination of these. But if it is more than one, it's probably going to be two of the four. So what do you think? Let's see what you guys think. Hilda says three. And yeah, everybody said no. Okay. Yenny Payayo, 2 and 3. Eliberto Martinez, 2. Okay. Erlinda, 2. And then Karen de la Cruz, 2 and 3. And then we've got Rocio Pinco, 3. We got a lot of guys, 2, 3, 2, 3. Most of you 2, 3. One, there's a 4. And then most of you 2, 3. Okay. The correct answer, 2 and 3. Students do not have the prerequisite knowledge. And prerequisite knowledge is what you need to know to be able to do something. If you don't know something, if I don't know the words for weather or types of weather, cloudy, rainy, sunny, what have you, foggy, how can I talk about the weather? That's prerequisite knowledge, right? So I need to know something in advance before I can do something. So that's number one. We're going to see what I'm talking about. Number two, students didn't have enough exposure. Now, what do I mean by that? So if we look at it, for students, now this is very important. I want you to keep this in mind. It's very important. For students to succeed, they must have prerequisite knowledge and skills. If they don't, they will not be able to perform. Okay? As a result, they will lose motivation and interest. Okay? So what is the prerequisite knowledge these students needed? First of all, they needed to be able to tell the difference between singular and plural. All right? Demonstrative. So singular and plural, you know, nose, ears, feet. Now he did it. He pointed it out, but the students didn't. They just heard it. They repeated it. they didn't necessarily understand it or process the information. Okay, because if they had, the two volunteers that went up, they didn't know anything. So the first little girl, he says, chin, show me the chin. The girl didn't know. So when the little girl finally, he says, chin, show me and then the little girl just repeated, right? The eye of the chin. Then the little boy goes up and he says, show me the arm. And the little boy's like, what? And he points to the poster. He says, arm. Oh, arm. Show me your hand. So he says, okay, forget about the arm. Show me your hand. And then the little kid goes like this to his arm. No, hand. Students didn't learn the vocabulary. They didn't know the vocabulary. How am I going to refer to parts of my body if I don't know what those parts are? I don't know the words in English. I didn't learn them. So how can you expect me to demonstrate this is my eye, this is my nose, this is my mouth, if I don't know the words? I heard you say them, I repeated them, but I don't know them. Second, you have the demonstratives. So this and these. Now remember, demonstratives also include that and those. Yeah? Because if I'm at a distance, say, those are your arms, or that is your nose. But he wanted this and these. So they needed to practice, and also the vocabulary, right? So what exposure, he needed to teach or review the demonstratives, this and these. Number two, he needed to teach vocabulary with greater visual support. They needed to practice in pairs first with visual aids and monitoring before he asked them to come up front, and then to culminate with what he did at the end. So there's a lot of things he needed to do before, steps that should have come before he asked them to do what they were not prepared to do. And they weren't prepared to do it because they hadn't practiced and they didn't really learn, they didn't really have the prerequisite knowledge. Again, if I don't have the knowledge and the skills that I need for a task, I can't do the task, right? It's like, if you never taught me how to swim, how am I going to jump in the pool, right? A 4 meter deep pool and swim from one end to the other. I don't know how to swim. So how can I swim if you never taught me, right? So here, for example, the kids needed to learn. What's this? Hey, Robert, what's this? Oh, it's a nose. Okay. You want to make sure. Eva Flora, what's this? Ear, teacher. It's an ear. Okay. Ana Garcia, what's this? It's a mouth. Luz Elena Mendoza, what's this? It's an eye. Okay. And you want to check, make sure everybody really knows the words. And if I know the words, then I can tell you, I can show them, right? Okay. Anyway. Okay. So let's watch a third class. Now, what's the scaffolding? Now, remember, scaffolding is what we do to help students. It's something that we do to help the students and give them support. Okay, so what is the scaffolding that the teacher provides? And do the students produce the language? If so, what are they doing? Okay, so again, one more time. What is the scaffolding? What is the help that the teacher provides? How does the teacher help the students? Give them a little push in the right direction. And number two, do the students produce language? If so, what are they doing exactly? Okay. All right, let's take a look here. So think about these options. So this is before you watch the video. What scaffolding is there? Number one, the teacher gave students handouts to read from. Number two, the teacher wrote prompts on the board. Number three, the teacher modeled the language. And number four, the teacher pre-taught new vocabulary. So which of these did the teacher do? We're going to watch the video right now. So I'm just showing you these as an option or as options to consider. Okay. All right. Okay, let's do it. Let's watch it.
Okay, so now we've seen participial adjectives with both ed and ing endings. We're going to put them into practice in the next exercise, okay? So I want you to read the dialogue and fill in the blank spaces with the correct form of the adjective. Okay, but be prepared to justify your answers. Okay, we can start now. Okay, so let's see how you guys did in this exercise. Rodrigo, can you give me the answer to number one, please?
Yeah.
What did you get and why?
The answer to number one is exciting because it's in reference to Las Vegas. Las Vegas is a city, so we use ing.
Excellent, well done. So could you ask maybe Natalie something?
Yes, sure. Okay, Natalie, what do you have for number 2?
The answer for number 2 is direct because it's in reference to Mike. Mike is a person, so we use ed.
All right. That sounded pretty good. I got to tell you, that sounded pretty good. I like the way that sound. I like the way the students express themselves. So what is the scaffolding? What scaffolding did the teacher provide? Let's see what you guys come up with, okay? Let's see. Let's take a look. Let me put on my glasses again. I need, reading glasses here. 2 and 3, we'll model the language. 2 and 4. Okay. Jessica Celarita, 2 and 4. Carla Irma, Clara Irma, Tomaya, 2 and 4. Luz Corrina, 2 and 4. Elva Orcasitas, 4. Let's see, we have Sandra Rodriguez, Caballero, 2 and 4. We have, who was that? Well, you guys are moving around. Nieves, Mahoop, 2. A lot of people putting 2 and 4, or 4. Okay. All right, 2 and 3, 2 and 4. A lot of people. All right, good. Everybody, we got so many people in here. We got about 1,000 people over here. So I'm trying to catch up. I'm trying to say the names. You guys are really participating. I love it. Okay, I love the participation. Very good. Okay, correct answer is 2. The teacher wrote prompts on the board. If you compare what the student said, right? You compare what the student said to what's on the board, that gave them the right push. Let's watch it one more time. Okay, very quickly. Look at the board, okay? Watch the board.
Okay, so now we've seen participial adjectives with both ed and ing endings. We're going to put them into practice in the next exercise, okay? So I want you to read the dialogue and fill in the blank spaces with the correct form of the adjective. Okay, but be prepared to justify your answers. Okay, we can start now. Okay, so let's see how you guys did in this exercise. Rodrigo, can you give me the answer to number 1, please?
Yeah.
What did you get and why?
The answer to number 1 is exciting because it's in reference to Las Vegas. And Las Vegas is a city, so we use ing.
Excellent, well done. So could you ask maybe Natalie something?
Yes, sure. Okay, Natalie, what do you have for number 2?
The answer for number 2 is direct because it's in reference to Mike. Mike is a person, so we use ed.
Now, if you notice, they're not reading anything. They're not looking at the board. So the teacher trained them well. And so they sound very natural and they're explaining their answers. Okay. So all we have to do is we train our students, and then over time, they build up their vocabulary, they build up their lexicon so they can talk about these things. And so they sound very natural. So they expand their ability to talk about different things. Okay, good. Appropriate content, number 2. All right, so appropriate content is something that we do when we teach. Now let me ask you a question. True or false? A teacher is working with an intermediate or B1 level class. Now, if you're teaching in a school, this is a high school class. If you're teaching at an institute, this is an intermediate level class. He is doing a live listening on the topic of rational decision-making versus decision-making by chance. The topic is appropriate for the course or language level. True or false? And the reason I'm using this example is because there's a video out there from a famous book that's based on this. So I won't say where. I don't want to put anybody in a tight spot, but yeah, so this is based on that. It's a live listing. The topic is rational decision-making versus decision-making by chance. Is this appropriate for the course or language level? True or false? What do you think? Let's take a look here. Let's see what we get. Let me put on my, I gotta be running because it's blurry, and I want to see the names nice and clearly. There we go. We got my progressive lenses over here. We got progressive lenses. No, actually, they weren't reading from their handouts. They were actually looking at their answers in the book. Remember, it's a workbook. So the workbook answers They look at it was a workbook, a grammar workbook. So they weren't actually reading from their handouts. True. Live listening at the topic is appropriate. True. Oh, everybody's saying true, except Victor Perez, he says false. Everybody else is saying true. Victor, you're all by yourself. That's not necessarily a bad thing, though. Don't worry about it, pal. Let me see. Everybody's true. Victor Perez, you're all by yourself. Again, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Okay, all right. So listen, the point here is we can use the Common European Framework and other international standards to determine if the content is appropriate for what we're teaching, okay? It's appropriate for the students to speak. This is actually false, okay? And all you need to do is look at the descriptors for the different levels. This is actually a B2 level topic, okay? B2 level, even B2 plus. Remember, rational decision-making versus decision-making by chance. That is not a B1 level topic, okay? So all you need to do is read the descriptors, the can-do statements for B1 and compare it to B2, and you will realize it's actually a B2 level activity. So it's actually, the answer is false, okay? And that means that if the level of the language, the level of the input is too high, students will not be able to speak. They won't be able to process the information. And so if they can't process the information, they can't speak. So remember, when we're doing a listening or a reading, we use it to introduce grammar or vocabulary. We use it to get students to practice their speaking or their writing. But the main reason is to help them develop their comprehension skills. And the comprehension we want to verify through speaking. Just remember that. Whenever you're doing a speaking or a listening, it's not enough to do the multiple choice questions in the course book or in the textbook. You want to make sure they really understand by asking them questions. So for example, if we were doing that lesson on rational decision-making versus decision-making by chance, first of all, I would ask Angelica Reyes, Angelica, what is rational decision-making? Explain it to me. Miriam Medina, you explain it to me too. You give me your definition. Milagro Montes, you give me your definition. Okay. Now I'm going to call on Elizabeth Asabache. Elizabeth, can you explain decision-making by chance? Okay. Sandra Carrasco, if the answer is false. Sandra Carrasco, can you explain decision-making by chance? Okay. Talia Uceda, can you explain decision-making by chance? Okay, now I'm going to call on different students. Iris Atachagua. Iris, can you give me an example of rational decision-making? Vivian Diaz, can you give me an example of decision-making by chance? And so on, right? Jacqueline Sarete, can you compare them? Give me, how do they compare? How are they similar? How are they different? And finally, Victor Perez. Victor, can you give me an example? An example of decision making in your own life, the rational decision making, a rational decision that you've made in your life? Okay. Jenny Candia, can you give me an example of decision making by chance? Did you ever do that? Did you ever make a decision by chance of throwing the dice or something? And so on. So you want to make sure they really understood the content, the topic. How do you know if you don't ask them? If they don't tell you, if they don't internalize the information, process it, internalize it, and personalize it and relate to it. You need to get evidence. And that's another important word here. This word is fundamental, outcomes. Outcomes. How do we know our students have learned? One way is for them to speak and to tell us what they know, what they understood, what they processed, how they feel. That's the way to do it. So create those opportunities, even when you're doing a reading or a listening. Okay. All right. All right. So this is not for B1. It's not a B1 level activity. No way. I'd never do it. Okay. Actually, if you ask me, decision making by chance versus the rational decision making, I'd have to think about it. Okay. And I'm an adult. Okay. Strategies and techniques. Let's go to strategies and techniques. One of the strategies and techniques is cultural personalization. Cultural personalization. That means that what we want to do is we want to adapt the content to the student's own culture and reality. Okay? Student's own culture and reality. So if we are in Peru, what we are supposed to do, how do you implement cultural personalization? You implement cultural personalization through Peruvianization of the content, of the material, of the lesson, of the activity. You Peruvianize the activity. Okay. Now you might be saying, what's he talking about? What was it? Okay. Ideally, if you want an effective curriculum, you want an effective curriculum. You know, in Peru, you know, I've worked so many years in language centers, you know, and in Peru, there's this tendency to work with textbooks. And most of the textbooks come from other countries, whether they come from the UK, whether they come from Canada, they come from the United States, wherever they come from. They usually come from another place. Okay, and they're very good now. Nowadays, course books, textbooks are very good. They're better than they were 30 years ago. But they shouldn't be the only source. We also need some content that's authentic from the real world, because a lot of things in the course book, they're good, they're well designed, but they're sterilized. Not everything is like what you see in the real world, right? You come over here, I invite you all you guys over here. I take you right here to the mall, which is about 5 minutes from here, 10 minutes. 7 minutes, actually. 7 minutes from here, I take you two guys to the mall. Some of that stuff that they teach in the course books, it's not going to help you in the mall. Okay, so we need authentic material, but we also need Peruvianized material, because they're also going to need to talk about their own realities. They're going to run into people, they're going to be working in companies that interact with other companies from different parts of the world, and they need to understand their own context and to be able to talk about their own context. So we need 3 things. Okay. We need to have 3 components: the course book, authentic material, and Peruvianized material. That's the ideal curriculum. The ideal curriculum will have all 3. Okay. All right. So if we look here, for example, department store, we want our students to, and there could be a lot more words, many more words. Department store, restaurant, mall, we need to match. Yeah. All right. So take a look at it for a second. Okay. So what do you think here? So we got a mall, we got pictures there, we got real pictures from Peru. Yeah. All right, so we got Siete Sopas, we got Ripley, and we got Real Plaza Salaberry. Okay. These are very popular places in Lima, of course. It could be in Trujillo, it could be in Iquitos, it could be Madre, Puerto Maldonado, it could be in Tacna, it could be in Juliaca, whatever. Wherever you are, you can use examples to illustrate. Yeah, Huancayo has a lot of malls too. Arequipa, Trujillo, etc. Okay, Cajamarca, Chiclayo. And so you want to Peruvianize. You're teaching vocabulary, but you want to Peruvianize it. So if they connect it to their own reality, it's easier to understand, it's easier to process, and it's easier to talk about, right? Okay, so wrong way. There we go. So now we got in the right place. So Ripley is a department store. Siete Sopas is a restaurant. Real Plaza Salaberry is a mall. Okay, and we want to apply the 1 + 1 + 1 rule. General definition, for example, you want 3 pieces of information. In this particular case, maybe you want a general definition plus an example plus a personal experience. So here, for example, we go back here. Siete Sopas. A restaurant is a place where you can have a meal for breakfast, lunch, or dinner. So I can say, Elizabeth Asabache, what is a restaurant? Elizabeth is my student. She says, a restaurant is a place where you can have a meal for breakfast, lunch, or dinner. Then she says, Siete Sopas is a popular restaurant that specializes in soups, but it also offers other delicious Peruvian dishes. For example, they have an excellent lomo saltado, right? And delicious empanadas, or whatever it is, right? Now, personal. Last Saturday night, I went with my family. The food was delicious. Okay, so You want to get your students accustomed to elaborating. We don't want short answers. We don't want single sentences. We want elaborated responses, elaborated experiences or examples. And we need to teach them how to do that. And so if we follow a particular format, they will be able to produce better language, better quality language. And if they can talk about their own reality, it's easier for them to do it. And if they can personalize it from their own experiences, it's easier for them to speak. So that's why we need to combine the curriculum in the curriculum, textbook, course book, authentic material, and Peruvianized material. When you combine all three, students are in a better position to speak. Okay. Here, for example, this is material that you can make in advance. Okay. Anticipatory preparation. You send this to your students in advance before you meet with them online. Okay, in your online course. And so they go over this, they know this is what they need to know for the activities, right? This is what they're going to need to know because you're going to do an activity. And then the day of the class online, you show them this map. And this is a map of Miraflores, highly accurate, not perfect, but it's highly accurate. You have a lot of stores and things going on over here. Okay. And so it's easier for them to relate, right? If they're giving directions for a place that they're familiar with. And again, this could be any place in any part of the country. I'm doing Lima because I'm familiar with Lima. I've been all over the country, but you know, Lima, I lived in Lima for 26 years and then, you know, I'm going back again soon. So there you go. All right. Reciprocal teaching. This is something where we teach each other things. Normally, reciprocal teaching applies to teachers. Okay. So we often hear, you know, in the professional development field for teachers, teacher training and professional development, we talk about reciprocal teaching, teachers teaching each other things that help them with their practice, with their expertise and their professionalism. But students can also engage in reciprocal teaching. Okay. Students can also engage in reciprocal teaching. And so what are the advantages of reciprocal teaching? Number one, it's relevant, right? Students are going to want to share something they think is important to them, relevant to them, more than whatever they might find in some textbook that they're not that crazy about, okay? Especially if they know a lot about it, right? So they want to talk about their favorite group, right? Musical group. They're going to want to talk about it. They know about it. They listen to it. They love it. They're going to want to share, right? They want to teach their classmates about that, or maybe their favorite place in the world where they want to go one day. They want to talk about Prague in the Czech Republic. That's their dream spot. They know all about Prague and they want to share about it. Prerequisite knowledge. Okay, the knowledge, you know, the advantage is they have the prerequisite knowledge. They know about the topic they want to teach their fellow students about. So this is students teaching students, okay, about something of interest. And then when it comes to performance, students can prepare in advance and then come to class fully prepared. We need to train them. These are things that we need to train our students on. We need to train them. Doesn't come along by magic, but we need to train them. Okay, and so for example, you know, it can be a topic, and this is supposed to be a key. I don't know what happened to my key. Anyway, it can be a topic from a book, or it can be free or open. You can let your students decide what they want to teach your students. You can have a reciprocal teaching segment where they teach each other things. Okay. Now, student speaking can be short but elaborated, you know, more accurate, fluent, very accurate. Yeah. Train them to use appropriate language and do this regularly. Okay, do this all the time. Students will get used to it. They'll get more fluent. They'll be more confident. They'll feel more comfortable. They'll feel more engaged. They're going to like your class because you're letting them speak about something that is important to them, that they enjoy and that they master, that they have a lot of knowledge about, right? Normally, we're the ones who want to be in control of the class, right? We're the ones who decide what is going to be taught, what we're going to talk about. Let the students decide what they want to talk about. Give the students some power to, you know, the freedom to decide what they want to talk about. Okay. And do this regularly. Now you don't have all the time in the world. I understand that. Okay, so that's why we have to be very meticulous in our planning, very efficient. We have to know when we can fit this in our classes, but it is very good. If you can find the time for students to engage in reciprocal teaching, it'd be very good for them. Now, let me share something with you. You know, I'm a certified trainer in the United States as well. I do a lot of training for an excellent, the fastest growing optical chain in the United States. It's called My Eye Lab, and I created this. And so this is just to give you a little example. It's a modified version, but basically, I'm going to teach you what astigmatism is right now. And I'm going to teach you very quickly, very few sentences. So you don't have to speak for an hour to teach somebody to something. The same thing applies to your students. Okay, so I'm going to teach you what astigmatism is. Okay, so here we go. Ready? Okay, you probably heard it in Spanish, astigmatismo. It's very similar. So here we go. What is astigmatism? Okay, so you see this? This is the iris. This is the pupil. And what covers both is the cornea. If we look at it from the side, here's the cornea. The cornea is transparent. The pupil, the iris, there's a lens behind the pupil. It's like a camera. So when we see things, the light is supposed to come in straight through the pupil, through the lens, go straight to the back and to the retina. Okay, this is the retina. This is the macula, and ultimately the optic nerve. Okay, and from the optic nerve, the light goes to the brain and it becomes images. Okay. Now with astigmatism, when we don't have astigmatism, the cornea is like this. It's like a circle. Okay, like a soccer ball. When we have astigmatism, light astigmatism, this is light astigmatism. It's more like an egg or an oval. When we have a severe astigmatism, it's like an American football. Okay, so when it's like this or like this, what happens? The light doesn't come in straight anymore. The light comes in at an angle. It's distorted. That distorts our vision. It makes it difficult for us to see. Finally, when we have astigmatism, the light doesn't come in correctly, and so we begin to see the light in streaks or in starbursts. So if you see this, you probably have astigmatism. If you see this, okay? Now, people with astigmatism sometimes have sensitivity to light. The light appears very strong. So people need anti-glare or anti-reflective lenses. Okay, this is no anti-glare. This is anti-glare. That's it. I just taught you what astigmatism was and what it looks like and how it affects your eye in less than 2 minutes. That's it. And your students can teach people, their fellow students. They can teach you. You can learn from the students. They can teach each other a lot of things, and they're going to want to share stuff that they care about. We don't always have to follow the textbook. Following the textbook all the time is predictable and it can be boring. Yeah. Final point: identify opportunity. We're in the final stretch. Okay, we have about 15 minutes left. So we have to create opportunities. Students should speak as much as possible, whenever possible. This is the mindset that you should have when you're preparing your lessons, when you're doing your lesson planning every night. You have to think, when, how, and when can my students speak? Yeah. When and how can my students speak? Who says that? Let me see that. Who's that? Let me see that. Elixencia Pity. She's going to have her eyes checked. There you go. She's going to have her eyes checked. Thanks for the lesson. Okay. Fantastic. So anyway, all right. So opportunities, when students are reading and listening, doing a reading and listening activity, they can speak, and they can speak a lot. They can speak at the beginning in the lead-in discussion. They can summarize the readings or the listenings. They can ask and answer questions. They can do all kinds of things. Grammar, analyzing, when they're analyzing and working together in pairs and groups, speculating, giving examples, control speaking practice. Get your students to give you examples. There's something I call co-constructing the lesson. When you're teaching grammar, let your students work with you to construct the grammar lesson. It doesn't have to be you talking all the time. It could be your students talking with you, working with you, creating examples to clarify the meaning, giving you some ideas. All right, that's a meta language, what we call meta language. Okay. Writing, peer feedback, summarizing, leading discussion, classroom language, making comments, asking questions, feedback on the class, etc. There's a lot of opportunities. We always, when we are planning our lessons, we have to think, okay, you know what, it's like a map, right? Where am I going to create these opportunities for speaking? Where? Here and here and here and here and here. What percentage of my class will have an opportunity to participate, right? Now, again, I could talk for a week about maximizing student talk time. I can't really get into it that much, but you have a cooperative learning technique like think, pair, share. Think, pair, share in 2 minutes. In 2 minutes, you can have 100% of the class participating and changing partners 3 times in 2 minutes. They can speak to two different people. So as we are planning our lessons, how you have to think, how can I maximize student talking time efficiently? Because, as teachers, we don't have enough time, right? We never have enough time. But we're thinking, how do I make efficient use of this, right? All right. So how do I make efficient use of the little time that I have? I never have enough time. So we have to be very efficient when we're planning. And that's why we're, strategically identifying where we need to create these opportunities. Okay, we're almost finished. So we're going to look at a class. And again, you can create opportunities for speaking at all times. Okay. All right. So this is a wonderful teacher. Okay.
Okay, guys, let's continue. Now you're going to look at the picture.
And I want you to listen to her, how she leads the class. Okay. And what are the students doing? Okay, I want you to listen. This is a very common, typical situation.
Okay, guys, let's continue. Now you're going to look at the pictures we have here. Okay, then you're going to listen to the conversation, and then you're going to match the pictures with the dates of the week. Okay? Gabriel, what do we have to do?
Okay, so first we'll look at the pictures, then we'll listen to the conversations, and finally we'll match the pictures with the days of the week.
Good, Gabriel. Please ask the same question to Sebastian.
Okay, Sebastian, what do we have to do?
Okay, first we have to look at the pictures, then we have to listen to the conversation, and finally we have to match the pictures with the days of the week.
Good.
Cassandra, what do we have to do?
Well, first we need to look at the pictures, then we have to listen to the conversation, and finally we have to match the pictures with the days of the week.
Very good, Cassandra. Thank you. Now, class, what do we have to do?
First, we have to look at the pictures, then we have to listen to the conversation, and finally we have to match the pictures with the days of the week.
Very good, excellent. Well.
All right, so this is something called comprehension checks for instructions. And so there we're trying to get students to discuss the instructions and talk about the instructions and ask each other about the instructions. Not just the teacher talking and then say, begin, right? We want the teacher to give the instructions first, call on the student, have one student call the other student, have the other student, and then do the choral so that everybody you can check to make sure everybody understands. Now, we're almost finished. So we have about 5-6 slides left. So, just about in time, about an hour and a half up here. So I've got about 9 minutes left. So we're going to watch this class, and I want you to see how this teacher creates opportunities for the students to participate. That's why we have to be not only and know when to create opportunity, but also how to choose our students to participate. So here we go.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, teacher. How are you? I am fine. Great. Okay, today we're going to be working with birds, right? Birds and examples of birds. Let's begin with this. What is this bird? And this? Run. And this? Read. And this? Look. And this? And this? Wow. Very good. So now, let's play this video. Please stand up, everybody. So you have to do the actions you watch on the screen, right? Be ready.
Let's get up and move. Are you ready?
Yeah!
Here we go. Run.
Run, repeat.
Walk.
Walk, repeat.
Jump.
Jump,
Fly.
fly.
Wow. Dance.
Dance,
Swim.
swim,
Ski.
ski,
Hug.
hug,
Rollerblade.
rollerblade,
Yay. Play the piano.
play the piano,
Play the guitar.
play the guitar,
Play baseball.
baseball,
Play golf.
play golf,
Ride a bike.
ride a bike,
Sing a song.
So take a seat now. Let's take a seat. So now I'm going to show you the verb, and I want you to tell me examples of the verb. Right? What is this verb? Bring. Bring. Who can give you an example with bring? Yeah. You. Very good. Very good. You drink water. Tell me what one. They are drinking the soda. Tell me one.
We are drinking and use apple juice.
We are drinking apple juice. Very good. Let's continue. What is this verb?
Eating.
Eat and eating. Who can give me an example with eat? Tell me.
You are eating the pizza.
You are eating pizza. Very good. Yeah.
Yeah, pizza.
I am
Pizza.
eating.
Eating pizza.
Very good. I am eating pizza. You, Gabriel.
I am eating in the hamburger.
I am eating a hamburger. Irina.
I am eating in the pizza.
I am eating pizza. Very good. So let's continue. What is this verb?
Speaking.
Speak and speaking. Give me an example.
I am speaking.
I am speaking English. Very good. French. They are speaking French. Oliver.
We are speaking English.
Very good. We are speaking in English. So what is this verb?
Cooking.
Cooking. Who can give me an example? Is it cook? Yeah?
My father cook.
Yeah. It could be in the house. Yeah, my father cooks in the house. Yeah.
My mother are cooking the rice.
How it sounds better? My mother are or my mother is?
My mother is.
My mother is cooking. Very good. Let's continue with the next verb. What is this verb?
Swim and singing.
Swim and singing. Swim. Who will give an example using the verb? Tell me.
I am swimming on the water.
In the water. I am swimming in the water. Yeah.
And you are swimming in the beach.
You are swimming in the beach. Very good.
I am swimming in the beach.
I am swimming in the beach.
I
Very
love
good.
to watch
Let's
this.
continue with the next.
I love the kids and I love this teacher. I love this guy, Luis Rodriguez from the Dominican Republic. I love this guy. Anyway, well, I shouldn't have said that. Now I'm going to ask you. How am I going to ask you this question? All right. Anyway, I got to ask you anyway. Here we go. Was the class successful? Yes or no? Simple yes or no. What do you think? What do you think, guys? Tell me. Was the class successful? Let me read and see what you guys have to say. Let me find out here. Slavic Cruz, like the Slavic Cruz. Yeah, everybody's saying, yeah. I love this question. I love this question. Okay, yes, it was. It was very, very good. Okay. Why was it successful? 1, teacher has good rapport. 2, students are highly engaged. 3, teacher used visuals and TPR. 4, teacher always insists on outcomes. By the way, TPR, total physical response. I know you guys know that, but just in case, presenter always has to explain what these acronyms are. Excellent, excellent. Everybody, yeah, all right, right on. Okay. All right, so everybody's saying yes, everybody love this class. I love this class. That's why I always use it. I always use this class. It is a nice class. That's the kind of class we want, right? Two, three, all of them. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So since I want to catch up, I got about 3 minutes left. All of them are correct. This guy did great. And his students, if you notice, he called on all the students. The students came with examples from here, okay, from their heads. I love the statements here from David Ortiz, Israel Mejia, Slavic Cruz, and some others who wrote a lot of things about, the first class that we saw and this one. Thank you for participating. A lot of great comments there on the techniques. But anyway, this teacher, if you notice, the students, they used all the pronouns: I, we, you, they, okay, he, she. They used all the pronouns, and they came up with examples that came from here, okay? Very good class, very good class. Final part, we're almost done. So, I talked about the speaking. Now we have to make sure we understand. This is something from the past exam that just took place in December. So this is actually one of the items. So let's go over it together since it has to do with speaking. And so this has to do with, again, the field. What does the field say through standardized exams? Okay, so let's read it together. Let's do it together, okay? After having worked on different activities on the topic, my favorite superhero, Humberto wants his students to practice their speaking fluency. Now, one thing I want you to do, always focus on these italic words, the words in italics. These are very important. So remember, Humberto wants his students to practice what? Speaking fluency. So you have to remember fluency. What is fluency? What do we do for fluency? Which of the following activities is it more appropriate to carry out? So 2 of them are less and 1 of them is more, or 2 of them are not and 1 of them is. A, the teacher writes the following prompts on the board. My favorite superhero is he, she can, he, she is able to, he, she is a blah, blah, blah person. He asks the students to work individually to complete the prompts with the powers and qualities of their favorite superhero. Next, the teacher groups the students and asks them to share their ideas. Okay, that's A. B, the teacher tells the students to write some sentences describing the powers and the qualities of their favorite superhero in their notebooks. Then the teacher pairs up the students. He asks them to exchange ideas about their superheroes using the sentences they have written down. C, the teacher asks the students to think of the powers and qualities of their favorite superhero for about some minutes. Then he tells them to stand up and share that information with at least 5 different classmates. He encourages the students to report their findings. So which of these is it most appropriate to carry out if you want to promote speaking fluency? Now remember, speaking fluency means we don't stop to think. Speaking fluency means we are not given any prompts. We're not controlled in any way. Remember, it's controlled versus free practice. Which of these is free practice? And I see a lot of C's, an A and C. It's actually only one correct answer. So we have to pick A, B, or C. And the correct answer is, now remember, controlled versus free practice. This is something to think about. The correct answer is C, okay? Because this is the one that leaves our students free to decide, okay? to think about the powers and qualities of their own, and then they just share the information. The teacher doesn't give them anything. The teacher lets them decide on their own. So it's a free activity. Here, last one for tonight, because the third one we won't be able to do. Martha's students have been talking about eating healthy food during the past few sessions. She wants to reinforce her students' speaking skills through a role play of a given situation. Given Martha's goal, number 57, which of the following contexts is least appropriate? Least appropriate, so the one that's not appropriate for this situation. A, student A is the doctor and student B is the patient. The patient wants to lose weight and the doctor gives him advice on what food to eat to achieve his goal. B, student A is the chef of a TV show and student B is his assistant. The chef gives instructions for the preparation of a dish and the assistant follows his instructions. C, student A is the cook of a high school and student B is a nutritionist. They have to create a balanced menu for the week, which will be posted on the school bulletin board. So two of these are related to health or healthy eating, health in general, good health or healthy eating, and one of them is not. What do you think? All right, let's see. So let me make sure we have number 57. So I'm going to write it number 57. Okay, we'll just leave it like that. Okay, everybody's got it. B, 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 A, B, 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 C. Most of you are seeing B, a couple of C's. The correct answer is B, because in A, the idea is for the patient to lose weight. Normally, if you're overweight or your weight is too high, it means that you're not healthy. We have to bring the weight down. So that's related. The doctor's working with the patients. A doctor wants what's good for you. The doctor's not going to do something that's not healthy. In C, there's a nutritionist and the high school cook. The nutritionist and the high school cook come together. So in A, you have the doctor, and C, you have the nutritionist. They can't be unhealthy. B is the only one, you just have a chef and assistant and they just prepare a dish. There's no reference to health. So these are the things we have to look for in terms of clues and such, okay? Conclusion, final thoughts. And there's a dog saying bye-bye. I like dogs. Okay, I can see it without the glasses. Number one, content must be relevant and engaging. If the content is not relevant and engaging, the students will not speak, they will not process it. It must also be at the right level. Remember, we saw that with the Common European Framework, the example with the live listening, okay? Scaffolding should always be present. We should always remember, not all of our students are strong. Some of our students are average, some of the students are strong, some of them are a little weaker. They need a little help. So we need to always provide scaffolding. So when you're doing your lesson planning, make sure that you are providing some form of scaffolding for your students. We must restrain ourselves. We must control ourselves. We want to talk. We want to talk. So you have to say, okay, you got to tell them, don't talk. Let them speak. Let them speak. Don't talk. Let them speak. Now, remember the silent way? There used to be well, actually it still exists. The silent way was an approach, right? It was a method, approach, whatever, that limited the amount of speaking on the part of the teacher. And the students were the ones who had to figure things out and work things out. So you have to kind of pretend you're doing the silent way, try to, hey, do I really need to talk now? Can I let my students speak? So in more traditional situations, when the teacher speaks, like correcting the answers in the book, can your students speak instead of you? How do you do that? Think about how you can do that. Create opportunities. Everywhere, let your students speak as much as they can whenever possible. Self-assess, watch yourself on video. Watch your class, listen to yourself. Are you talking too much? If so, when are you talking more? When are you talking less? How can you improve that? Always keep international standards in mind, as I said before, and give your students the tools they need to succeed and don't underestimate them. Final point, remember, the way to determine if a class is successful is the outcome. The outcomes come from the students, not from the teacher. Your learning objective indicates what you need to teach your students. The learning outcomes prove if they learn or not. And that's what you have to look for. And one way to do that is to get your students to speak and to demonstrate to you what they know and what they've learned and what they can do. So push for maximizing student talk time or talking time as much as possible, and your classes will be successful. Thank you very much. It was my pleasure to be here this evening. Wonderful, very nice comments. Thank you so much, Carmen Rosa, Pinedo, and everybody else who's saying so many nice things. My pleasure being here. I could do this all week and all month, all year. This is what I love. This is what I love to do. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And it's always wonderful to be connected. And again, my thanks to English teachers in Peru for the lovely invitation, for the kind invitation. As always, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It is a pleasure for us to have you here and start these amazing webinars with you. It's more than a pleasure for us.
Thank you.
Thank you again, Leo. So I want to go now to the questions. I have some questions for you. The first one from Ms. Soledad. In your opinion, what is more important, fluency or accuracy?
They're both important. That's a very good question. They're both very important. And when our students learn well, they'll have both, because we're creating situations. Obviously, we want them to be accurate. And we've already said we don't want them to be perfect, because the second language acquisition process is long, it's complex, it takes time. And as we're learning new things, at first we're going to make mistakes. But then over time, with more practice, more exposure, we're going to get better. But the more we practice, the more accurate we'll get, the more fluent we'll get. We'll have both if we create the right conditions. We can't just focus on one over the other. Both have to come in together, and it is possible if we create the right conditions for our students. A lot of practice, a lot of language exposure. You know, Stephen Krashen talked about this 40 years ago. He talked about the input hypothesis, right? Now it's called the optimal input hypothesis. He talked about this for 40 years. He said people will acquire language mainly through comprehensible input. That's still true today. So the more students are exposed to the language, the more they watch in English, the more they listen in English, etc., the more they read, all of that language will help them assimilate and build up their interlanguage, or what they know, or their own version of the second language, and they'll become more fluent. They'll be in a better position to talk. They'll be in a better position to write. They'll be in a better position to understand. They all come together. Remember that. So I can't speak about something if I don't understand what I'm reading or what I'm hearing. So I need a lot of input, a lot of exposure, a lot of practice. And then when I am given those opportunities, fluency and accuracy will come together. And that's what we need to aim for. Not one or the other. That's the way it used to be. I remember when I started teaching a few years ago, I don't want to say too many years, but a few years ago, we used to say, oh yeah, sometimes you need to focus on accuracy, sometimes you need to focus on fluency. Ideally, you want both of them to come together.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I have another question now from Ms. Stephanie Noah. She asks, could you please give us some ideas about effective feedback when we're doing these speaking activities?
Right. So there are going to be, now, this is very important. When you're thinking about feedback, and this could be a whole other session, when you're giving feedback, there are moments when feedback is called for, and there are moments when you need to let your students express themselves freely. When you shouldn't interrupt them, you shouldn't try to correct them. And I put it this way. Everything we do in a classroom is oriented towards form or meaning, okay, at any particular time, all right? So we're moving back and forth. So when we're teaching grammar, we're a little more focused on form than we are on meaning. So we are a little more on accuracy there. But again, remember, we want to build both together over time, right? But when we're teaching grammar, we're teaching vocabulary, at the very beginning, at least, we want to focus a little more. We want them to get it right, to learn it right, right? So we're teaching the past perfect, or we're teaching the future continuous, or whatever we're teaching. So whenever we're teaching grammar, whenever we're teaching pronunciation or vocabulary, that's when we need to provide corrective feedback, because we need to make sure that as much as possible, they get off to a very good start. as they are learning it, as they're acquiring that particular form. So for example, if you're trying to learn the difference between voiced and unvoiced S, right? The Z and the S. If we don't correct our students, then it may affect their ability to communicate effectively because, anybody who's listening to them is going to get confused. Wait a minute, why did he pronounce it like that, right? Blaze instead of blaze, right? It has an impact. So that's when we need to provide corrective feedback. Number one, there are moments when we don't want to correct our students. So you're doing a lead-in discussion. You want to engage your students for reading or listening. First, you have to connect the student, engage the students with the topic. If they're not engaged, they're not going to pay attention. They're not going to be interested. They're not going to process the information, and the activity is probably not going to work. So in that particular case, there's no reason for us to correct our students if they make mistakes, because we're talking about the topic. If you're about to do a reading on UFOs in Buda, and I think Buda is a hotspot for UFOs, but if you do an article on UFOs in Buda, you want to talk about UFOs. You want students to talk about what is a UFO? Do you think it's real? Have you ever seen a UFO? Etc. You're having a discussion because you want them to engage with the topic. Because if they're not interested in the topic, they're not going to take advantage of the reading. There, you don't want to correct them. So anytime you're focused primarily on meaning, and those are situations where you just want students to get their ideas out, then you don't correct them. And when you do have to correct them, there is a way to correct them. The old-fashioned way, the way they used to do it, the wrong way, was to give direct correction immediately and say, hey, no, that's not how you say it. Repeat. I went, not I goed. Repeat. And the student's like, I went? Yeah, so you're scaring the student, right? That's the old days, right? In the old days, back in the 80s, I wasn't teaching in the 80s, by the way. I was in high school in the 80s. But anyway, so you're going to scare the student, and the student doesn't benefit because you don't help the student to think, to reflect, and say, hey, wait a minute, what mistake did I make? So nowadays, you want to do. In fact, they even changed the name for it. They used to call it error correction. Now they call it corrective feedback, because error correction was very negative in connotation, very teacher-centered, right? Yeah. So now, when you do have to correct, you want it to be gentle. You want it to promote self-reflection on the student. So remember the example I gave. Is it? Carolina, you goed to the movie theater last night? You goed to the movie? So I'm putting a lot of stress on go. Why is he? And I'm listening to him and saying, well, what's wrong with the teacher? Why is he? Oh, wait a minute. I said go. Wait a minute. I think I made a mistake. Oh no, teacher. I went to the movie theater last night. Oh, you went to the movie theater? Okay. You want the student to self-correct. So why does the old teacher-centered classes would have you immediately correct and you give the answer? Let the student take over. Let the student think about it. Let the student self-correct. The student's going to feel a lot better. If they can self-correct, they're going to feel accomplished. Hey, I was able to self-correct. It happened to me in Spanish. When I was learning Spanish. Now my Spanish is pretty good, I think, but pretty darn good. But when I was younger, when I was a kid, I had the house Spanish. I was growing up. I had Peruvian parents. I had the house Spanish, and I made mistakes. And I remember my uncles would kind of laugh a little bit at the mistakes I made. And I don't like people laughing. So I said, okay, next time I'm going to say it right. So so in general, that would be the answer. There are times when we do correct, and just to make it very easy, listening we don't correct, reading we don't correct, speaking activities, most of them we don't correct unless they're focused on the particular form. Writing activities, of course, we don't. Open discussions, there are all types of different activities. When we're teaching grammar, when we're teaching vocabulary, when we're teaching pronunciation, then we do want to correct. But we want to correct gently, and we want the students to self-correct. That would be my answer to that question. It's a very good question, too.
Thank you. There is here another question. Here in Peru, we have large classes. This is a question here from Teacher Israel. He asks, how can we provide more opportunities for students to speak when we have these huge classes and we barely have time? Because, we also have like 3 hours per week too. So it's, not very easy for us.
So a lot of things we are not in a position to do, even though we want to do it. Over time, hopefully that will change. First of all, the amount of time per week should increase, but of course, teachers can't change that. They have what they have. So based on what they have, ideally also, there are a lot of things that a lot of people don't get today. And that includes Peru, that includes even the United States. A lot of people don't understand. They didn't learn the lessons from the pandemic. A lot of the things that we used to do in a face-to-face classroom can be done through a platform autonomously on the part of the students. Students can do a lot of grammar, they can do a lot of reading, they can do a lot of vocabulary learning on their own on a computer. And the teacher could focus on speaking, could focus on strategy teaching, on things that we really need to work on, that we don't have a time to because we have so much to cover in a regular class. Ideally, that should be one of the changes that should be implemented, hopefully. And listen, it's not just the public schools, it's the private schools. And I'm sorry to say, it's some of the larger, well-known institutes. I'm not saying which ones, but, even they don't get it. They still don't get it. So there's a need for a fundamental change in how we approach teaching in our virtual and face-to-face classes, because we're not taking advantage of the technology, but answering the question with what we have, because we're not going to change everything. We're not the president, so we can't change things. We're not the Minister of Education, so we're not going to change things tomorrow. So we have to have something called a participation matrix. And I talk a lot about this in my trainings. So, we have little time. Two things. We have to learn to be efficient with the little time that we have. So in that particular case, you have to identify those opportunities where you really need to get your students to speak, right? And with a participation matrix, the participation matrix has all your students in your class, whether it's 25, 30, 35 students, right? And I hope there aren't more, but I think they brought it down to about 35 or 30 students in the larger classes. And okay, so on this turn, who participated? Okay, it was Rodrigo, it was Mayra, it was David, it was Veronica, it was Julissa, and it was Miguel. Okay, so I had 6 students. I got another 24. Okay, so I'm going to wait. Next, whose turn is it? And I have to discipline myself to keep track of who's participating in class. Because if I don't, then I might be calling on the same students. If you watch yourself on video, you're probably going to realize you're calling on the same students over and over again. The other students aren't participating. That's even worse in a large class. It's very easy to do in a large class. And it's very easy to do even in a face-to-face class, in the physical class. It happens all the time. I've seen it before. I've seen where students were ignored, even though the teacher was trying to get people to participate. So we really have to discipline ourselves in keeping track of who has participated throughout a lesson. Okay, so those 6 students participated before. Now I want Veronica, I want David, I want Nancy, I want Jorge, and I want Miguelina to participate now. I'm going to call on them next. And so you're moving back and forth. And it's also not just speaking and typical speaking activities. Remember, you saw the video where we talked about the instructions for the activity. We can create opportunities for classroom language. We can create opportunities for meta language. So there are opportunities constantly in all the fundamental aspects of a lesson, not just in the traditional little spaces or moments or slots that we used to reserve for speaking. Students can speak at any time. That's why the name of the talk is Speaking Every Time, right? So because we want to create opportunities so students can speak all the time, whenever possible. So even though students may not be speaking in a particular situation, they can speak at other moments. So we have to identify those moments and promote them. And we also have to take the time, put them in groups. The technology allows it, right? They go into breakout rooms. Go into the breakout rooms, monitor the breakout rooms. If you send the students, your 30 students into breakout rooms, and you don't monitor the breakout rooms, what's the incentive for them to speak, really? I mean, if you were to go in and you don't monitor them at all, and you were to be able to see them without them noticing you, they'd be quiet. They wouldn't be talking. So, I mean, these are things, it takes a lot of work. That's why teachers do things that other people don't do. Accountants don't do, managers don't do. Teachers have a lot of work. It takes a lot of work, but it can be done. And again, despite the limitations, it is difficult when you have a large class, and it's difficult when you only have 3 hours a week. But you do what you can, and you have to be very efficient when you're planning your lesson and identifying, like I said during the talk, when can I get my students to speak? And it's not just the speaking activities. It can be at any time, doing a grammar presentation, doing a listening, what have you.
Yeah, thank you so much again. And there is just one more question that I would really like to ask you. And this is about when you were doing this part of making our students or letting them know what we're exactly doing at the class, like when we ask, what am I doing or what am I gonna do next? These ICQ questions. How can we make them maybe different? These type of questions, just because sometimes they just look at us like, why are you asking this to us again? It's like you have just said it, and they sometimes feel really uncomfortable, and this because probably they're like secondary students and they are not that comfortable as maybe primary students or kindergarten students, where they, oh miss, we gotta do this, you know, and that is not
You know what? That really depends on how you interact with your students. Because if you use a lot of the right positive reinforcement, the positive feedback, you give students recognition. Remember, this is a collaborative community in class. You know, now we refer to the classroom as a community where everybody is an important part of it and everybody has to make a significant contribution. So if everybody's helping you, if everybody's helping you, you know, make sure everything works fine, right? Just like the instructions and the SOCA and all these other questions, everybody feels important. And it's happened to me before. I've had teenagers in the classroom and, you know, at first they were a little skeptical. You know, some classes with teenagers are pretty tough. They can be tough. And I was beginning in the career. So it was tough for me because I had some students that were a little unruly. But then I figured out the best way to get them on board is to make them feel like they're making a contribution to the class. First, give them recognition for what they're doing well, and then give them a role to play in the classroom. And then everybody falls in, including teenagers. And I was able to really overcome that. I had one that was really tough, and that kid, within a week, I had that kid on board 100%. So he went from joking around and laughing and distracting the core of the class to being an eager participant all the time and asking me, teacher, what else can I do? So I think it really depends on how we interact, and we can get everybody involved and you give them recognition, the right kind of positive feedback. And you also demonstrate, especially to teenagers, that you've done your homework and you've learned about what they like, what they think is important, what their reality is like. Because there's nothing like somebody who seems like a disconnected viejo, right? This guy doesn't know anything about what we care about, our music, our culture, what we care about. He's just teaching whatever's in the textbook. He doesn't care. But if we do our homework, then they'll like you. I think one of the things that's really hard to do to be a teacher, you have to be a likable person. Your students have to like you. They have to think you're cool, especially if they're teenagers. You know, tweens and the younger ones, you know, they're more adaptable. But once you hit the teenage years, if they don't like you, they don't think you're cool, you're in for a hard time. So you have to do your homework. Some of it is your personality, but some of it is your hard work finding out, okay, what do these Carol G, who's Carol G? Let me find out who Carol G is. Okay. And some of these other people that they care about, their culture, what do they like? What are their activities? And you have to do something very simple. It's called the needs analysis. Every time we begin a new school year or every 2 months, every bimester, do a needs analysis, find out what kinds of activities they like, what they think is important, what are the topics they want to talk about. Inform yourself. And if you do, you'll be in a better position to avoid situations like you said, that might be a little uncomfortable. It might make it difficult for you to connect and establish that rapport with your students. So I think that's probably the key, especially when you're dealing with teenagers, because the teenagers are probably the toughest ones to work with.
Yeah. Okay, thank you again for everything. And I would like you to stay with us for a bit longer. We have lots of things for today.
Certainly.
And I'm going to invite Mariela to join us.
Thank you, dear Leo, on behalf of English teachers in Peru for this amazing presentation. As usual, I know that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, dear Leo, again. Bien, querido Leonardo, están todos esperando momento de hablar en nuestro idioma, bueno, mi idioma natal, porque el tuyo es el inglés, lo sé, para poder dar algunas instrucciones precisas para lo siguiente. Antes de seguir conversando, Leonardo, te pido un minutito, por favor. para seguir conversando. Está por ahí mi Jessica Carguavilca. Por favor, vamos a dar el exit ticket, que es el link para que puedan registrar su asistencia y en donde también van a encontrar preguntas relacionadas al webinar del día de hoy. Tienen que responder las preguntas y también una de estas preguntas les va a solicitar la palabra clave para el webinar del día de hoy. Y la palabra clave, escuchen bien todos, es welcome. Es nuestro primer webinar, así que elegimos esa primera palabra. Recuerden, la palabra clave, the keyword is welcome. Esa es la palabra clave. Vamos a dar solamente 10 minutitos para que puedan llenar este exit ticket. ¿Por qué? Porque sus datos nos van a servir para el sorteo que vamos a hacer en este preciso momento. Así que nadie se puede ir. Vamos a hacer un sorteo de 3 becas para cursos internacionales que están a cargo de Mr. Leonardo Mercado, quien ha tenido la amabilidad, la generosidad de poder otorgar a la comunidad de English Teachers in Perú estas 3 becas para un curso internacional. Así que por favor, llenen, ya está fijado el link, por favor, si ya está fijado el link en el chat de YouTube, lo llenan con sus datos correctos, por favor. No olviden colocar bien su correo electrónico, es muy importante. De igual manera, responder correctamente las preguntas para poderles enviar el material, los recursos que vamos a compartir con ustedes, la información también que nos va a facilitar Mr. Mercado. Y por otro lado, recuerden que para que puedan participar en las becas es en este momento. Ojo, que en 10 minutos más cerramos el link del formulario y van a ingresar todos sus datos a este sorteo y solo quienes estén presentes, porque vamos a hacer el sorteo y digan presente ahí en el chat, se van a hacer acreedores de la beca. Si sale alguien y no está presente, entonces pues se va al agua y pasamos con el siguiente teacher, ¿ok? Así que tienen que estar todos presentes, no se muevan por favor, completen. Aquí está, https://cutlly.ly/etip, E mayúscula, T mayúscula, I minúscula, P mayúscula. Tienen que respetar mayúsculas y minúsculas para que puedan ingresar al exit ticket. Summer, S-U-M-M-E-R, recuerden que la S B mayúscula, 2023. ¿Ya? Esta última parte, a partir de ETIP, que son nuestras siglas, English Teachers in Perú, la I minúscula, tienen que respetar mayúscula y minúscula, tal como lo están viendo aquí en pantalla. Summer, S mayúscula, todo lo demás en minúscula, U-M-M-E-R, 2023. Completen, por favor, en este momento. Mientras van completando todos, no se muevan, porque con esos datos ya vamos a hacer el sorteo en unos minutitos más. Conversamos con Mr. Mercado. Querido Leo, si estás por ahí ya, para que puedas compartir con nosotros. Una vez más, agradecerte a nombre de toda la comunidad English Teachers in Perú. El día de hoy ha sido una presentación espectacular. Son más de 1000 maestros que han estado conectados en este webinar. Realmente ha sido grandioso, grandioso, que han estado enganchados con toda la presentación. Me gustaría que puedas compartir con nosotros, estimado Leonardo, de repente puedes compartir también en pantalla si tienes la información sobre la institución que diriges, NAS Learning Solutions, que sabemos pues tiene cursos de capacitación internacional, que puedes compartir en este momento la información con todos los maestros.
Perfecto, cómo no, muchas gracias. A ver, vamos a compartir. A ver. Ok. Let's see. Screen sharing. Let's see. Muy bien. Vamos a compartir desarrollo profesional, diferentes iniciativas para lo que es nuestros programas de desarrollo profesional para docentes. Tenemos, como ya saben, muchos años de experiencia trabajando con docentes a nivel nacional. Y para ello nosotros ofrecemos una diversidad de diferentes programas de acuerdo a las necesidades y de acuerdo a los grupos, ¿no? de docentes que necesiten capacitación. Uno que estamos ofreciendo en verano ahora es el NYC International ELT Certificate. Es un programa que ofrece, digamos, combina una serie de diferentes recursos y materiales y contenidos, como por ejemplo lo que es un nuevo curso de preparación para el examen de la Universidad de Cambridge, el TKT, el Teaching Knowledge Test, el cual no solamente está dirigido específicamente al examen, sino que desarrolla también los conocimientos necesarios en lo que es metodología, lo que es el idioma inglés en sí, ¿no? La parte lingüística del idioma, y lo que es el tema del aprendizaje. Entonces, es un curso que efectivamente cubre esas tres áreas y a su vez prepara a uno con respecto a lo que se necesita hacer para poder tener mayores posibilidades de éxito en dicho examen. También hay una plataforma, me incluye una plataforma en línea con contenidos sobre metodología, lectura, videos, etc. Y el aprendizaje, van a haber 8 sesiones en vivo sobre la enseñanza del idioma inglés, como también lo que es preparación para exámenes internacionales de inglés, como GEP, el PET y el FCE. Y, digamos, las sesiones durarán 3 semanas. El curso online durará nominalmente 4, pero obviamente aquellos que necesitan un poco más de tiempo lo pueden tomar, pero digamos, de forma general, estamos hablando de un curso que dure 4 semanas. El certificado será por 150 horas y el costo será por 295 soles. Es por el curso que justo ya estamos lanzando, ¿no es cierto? Por otro lado, obviamente los beneficios son preparación de exámenes, conocimientos de enseñanza, experticia en la enseñanza y por supuesto los recursos que se ofrecen mediante la plataforma virtual. Van a haber webinars, van a haber contenidos en línea, artículos como mencioné, el curso, digamos, de TKT, con todo lo que contiene, como pueden ver una pequeña muestra, preguntas de práctica, voces en diversos acentos del inglés australiano, estadounidense, del Reino Unido, de Australia, de Irlanda, etc. Análisis de los contenidos de los exámenes, prácticas, ayuda audiovisual, traducción de las instrucciones para que uno entienda lo que comprende el examen, entre otros contenidos muy importantes, ¿no? También tenemos que en este momento no es la época, pero les voy avisando que más adelante, quizás a partir de abril, estaremos ofreciendo el ELT Pack, ¿no? El ELT Pack es un programa que ha tenido mucho éxito, una enorme cantidad de profesores que los prepara no solamente en su conocimiento, con respecto a sus conocimientos y nivel de preparación para ser docentes de inglés, pero también los prepara para los exámenes del Ministerio de Educación, a lo que respecta a los exámenes de nombramiento y ascenso. Entonces, se trabaja mucho el tema metodológico, pero también se hace mucho trabajo en el aspecto de preparación para los exámenes ya mencionados, particularmente estrategias, cómo manejar los contenidos, etcétera, ¿no? De qué manera podemos maximizar la posibilidad de que los docentes puedan afrontar dichos exámenes con mayor confianza y con las estrategias necesarias para poder tener el mayor éxito en lo mismo, ¿no? Entonces también, digamos, desarrollo profesional en general, conocimiento sobre la enseñanza del idioma inglés, estrategias y, por supuesto, la preparación para los exámenes del ministerio, ¿no? Webinars, una serie de webinars muy interesantes. Y debo mencionar que la persona que va a dar todas las charlas, todas las sesiones, los webinars, tanto en el programa de verano como lo que sería más adelante el ELT Pack, va a ser quien habla, ¿no? Entonces, digamos, eso es lo que me encanta hacer y bueno, soy la persona que, digamos, más representativa de la empresa NYC Learning Solutions. También debo mencionar que tenemos exámenes internacionales. Ha habido un bastante interés últimamente para lo que es la certificación, para avalar los niveles alcanzados o el nivel de dominio del idioma inglés que puedan tener los docentes. Tenemos un examen computarizado que se puede tomar inclusive en casa. O sea, ni siquiera es necesario que uno tenga que movilizarse o desplazarse a un centro de idiomas o un laboratorio en algún determinado lugar. Uno puede tomar el examen desde la comodidad de su hogar y cubre todas las habilidades, como también lo que es la parte lingüística, lo que respecta a la gramática y vocabulario. La parte speaking se corrige en Nueva York o Londres y combina tanto el inglés americano como el inglés internacional, ¿no? Es un examen que dura unas 2 horas y media o 3 horas, dependiendo del nivel, ¿no? Mientras más alto el nivel, dura un poco más. Pero es un examen que ha tenido también para nosotros bastante éxito y que creo que ahora está en bastante demanda debido a que ahora, digamos, hay una necesidad mayor para certificarse en el idioma, ¿no? Y bueno, hacemos toda la comunicación con la antelación debida, correo, credenciales, lo demás, y bueno, es de lo más sencillo poder tomar uno de estos exámenes, ¿no? Nuevamente, debo repetir que no hay nada como poder tomar un examen internacional de la comunidad del hogar de uno. Entonces, ese es otro producto nuestro que ha tenido mucha demanda y por supuesto el certificado es internacional, alineado con el marco común europeo, firmado en Londres, y indica el nivel alcanzado tanto de forma en general como también por cada una de las habilidades y las secciones. Bueno, en general esos son los productos y los servicios principales que tenemos. Y nuevamente agradezco la oportunidad a English Teachers in Peru para poder estar acá con ustedes y compartir un poquito sobre quiénes somos como empresa y qué es lo que ofrecemos con el mayor ahínco y con la mayor dedicación, porque nosotros siempre somos de la idea de poder hacer una contribución importante al país en lo que respecta al desarrollo profesional de nuestros docentes, sin pensar principalmente en lo que es el tema monetario y económico, sino acá lo que más prima es poder ofrecer soluciones de desarrollo profesional accesibles a un precio sumamente razonable, para que la mayoría se beneficie, porque al final se beneficia el país, y eso es lo que se busca, ¿no? Para todos. Así que agradezco la oportunidad nuevamente, Mariela, agradezco la oportunidad a los Teachers in Peru, y estoy siempre a la orden para lo que me necesiten. Muchas gracias.
Muchísimas gracias, Leonardo. Entonces, bueno, ya hemos podido ver. Por favor, yo les pido que estén súper atentos ahí en el chat. Voy a volver a compartir aquí un momentito. Que estén súper atentos porque vamos a realizar el sorteo de las becas, ¿sí? Vamos a realizar vamos a realizar el sorteo de las becas. Mr. Mercado ha tenido la generosidad de darnos 3 becas para la comunidad, 3 becas completas. Muchísimas gracias, Leonardo, por ese gran gesto para uno de los cursos que está dictando a través de NIS Learning Solutions, que es justamente de Reading and Writing, que se va a desarrollar en el mes de abril, ¿verdad, Leonardo?
Correcto, así es. Es un curso nuevo que se va a lanzar en abril, un curso internacional.
Perfecto, entonces ya han llenado todos el exit ticket, están ya registrados sus datos, estamos ya por cerrar 2 minutos más y vamos a cerrar ya el formulario para que todos los que han llenado entren al sorteo. Tienen que estar ahí en el chat, permanecer en el chat en vivo, para que si ustedes salen sorteados, lo primero que vamos a pedir nosotros es que puedan escribir en el chat presente para que podamos confirmar que ustedes están siendo parte de este webinar, si es que ustedes salen ganadores. Si salen ganadores o sale el nombre del ganador y no dice presente, no escribe en el chat, no demuestra que está presente en este webinar, entonces pasa el agua. Solo vamos a esperar 15 segundos por el tiempo, que por ser el primer webinar se ha extendido, pero pues ha sido muy, muy productivo con toda la información que hemos recibido. Mientras tanto, yo resumo algo de lo que nos ha compartido Mr. Mercado, porque están preguntando aquí en el chat si podemos compartir tu información, quieren tu correo, quieren tu teléfono, quieren todo, Leonardo, pero se les va a enviar a todos los que se han registrado, son como 1000 docentes, se les va a enviar la información del webinar y de todas las propuestas de capacitación que tiene Mr. Mercado. A ver, un segundito, please. Ahora sí. Ya está, entonces pasamos un minutito más, mientras tanto, a conocer qué tenemos para la próxima semana. Si estamos por ahí, por favor, estamos por ahí. Mi estimada Mayra Drake.
Yes, miss, I'm here.
Okay, continue, please, go ahead.
Okay, good evening, everybody. And thank you, Mr. Leonardo, for your presentation. And now I'm going to invite you for our next webinar. We will talk about instructive listening, exploring, and opportunities. Okay, please, teacher, don't miss it because you can learn how to teach listening. Also, this webinar will help language teachers to reflect on their belief about instructive listening, the problems learners face, and the possible solutions that can be offered. This webinar will be by Cesar Pablo, and this will be on Saturday, 18th at 6 p.m. on our YouTube channel. Please don't miss it.
Thank you, dear Mayra. Entonces ya saben, teachers, tenemos una cita pactada para el próximo sábado. Nos acompaña un profesional con mucha trayectoria. Actualmente está en Edipna también como teacher trainer. Y va a compartir con nosotros estrategias para enseñar esta competencia tan importante y a veces un poco compleja para nosotras, para poder desarrollar con nuestros estudiantes, como es el listening. Así que para la próxima semana ya tenemos esta cita, sábado, igual que hoy, a las 6 de la tarde. Y pasamos ahora sí, Leonardo, quería hacer el resumen, discúlpenme que me entró un ataque de falta de aire por hablar tanto. Y es que estoy viendo, leyendo a la vez todos los comentarios, no cesan de escribir y ya están ahí escribiendo y están pidiendo información. Resumo. Con respecto a lo que compartiste sobre las propuestas de capacitación, ahora para este mes los cursos que se tienen, por si es que los teachers ahí igual van a recibir la información en su correo electrónico, están dirigidos a preparación para dar examen internacional, ¿verdad? Y el otro es para el TKT, ¿no? Yo entiendo que, porque he visto que es algo que les ha gustado mucho a los docentes en esta presentación, hay videos, por ejemplo, de clases como los que hemos visto el día de hoy, dentro de la metodología que de repente vas a utilizar para el desarrollo del curso.
Siempre en las sesiones de metodología, siempre empleo clases, porque es importante que se analicen, que se vean. Hay clases muy buenas, hay clases buenas que también nos pueden ofrecer lecciones importantes de cómo proceder en diferentes circunstancias. Así que es mi costumbre siempre emplear clases como referencias para analizarlas, hacer que los docentes que participen también las analicen y lleguemos a conclusiones juntos, ¿no? Que puedan ser beneficiosos, ¿no? O beneficiosas, ¿no? Así que sí, definitivamente la metodología empleada hoy, el día de hoy en la sesión es una metodología que siempre empleo para capacitación. Y así va a ser en todos los cursos que siempre ofrecemos a la comunidad.
Excelente. Y por supuesto, y bastantes miembros de la comunidad han seguido contigo el ELT-PAC, que es este curso de capacitación, que también es de metodología de enseñanza y que generalmente se da por los meses de julio, agosto, junio, que son cerca de los exámenes del Ministerio de Educación. Es una forma de prepararse para estos exámenes. Y bueno, tengo que decir que muchos están muy agradecidos porque pues la mayoría ha logrado pasar, por no decir todos, han logrado pasar este examen y ya están presentándose para el nombramiento. Muchísimas gracias, Leonardo, una vez más, a nombre de ellos también, en su debido momento te lo hice saber y ahora te hago el recuerdo también de los calurosos saludos que recibes de diferentes partes del país, de estos maestros que han formado parte de los grupos que has podido llevar para capacitar para los exámenes del Ministerio de Educación, que están muy agradecidos por esta capacitación y por los resultados que han obtenido. Y bueno, ya, teacher, dime.
No, bueno, a mí me llena felicidad porque puedo repetir, ¿no? Lo que debe primar sobre todo es que ayudemos a los docentes a realizar sus metas y sus sueños, que alcancen lo que se merecen, ¿no? Con tanto trabajo que ellos hacen. Entonces, que yo pueda aportar algún granito de arena, perdón, en ese sentido, me llena de una enorme satisfacción y una felicidad por ellos. Sus éxitos de ellos hacen que yo pueda seguir en esto, ¿no? Y de verdad que me alegra mucho y estaremos siempre a la orden para ayudar a todos, aportar en lo que podamos de manera, con la humildad del caso y obviamente con la dedicación y el compromiso que corresponde.
Muchísimas gracias, Leonardo. Y bien, José, ya estamos listos, ya cerramos el formulario para poder procesar los datos para el sorteo. Si nos confirmas, por favor. ¿Nos confirmas, por favor, la información para poder saber si ya podemos proceder para iniciar el sorteo, ya con todos los datos? Por aquí hay algunas preguntitas. Sí, no se preocupen que hay una opción en los formularios en donde dice ciudad y creo que vamos a agregar, también sé que tenemos bastantes maestros de diferentes países, a Mr. Juan Carlos Cardona Orrego, no se preocupe, vamos a considerar agregarlos también a Colombia, Ecuador, Chile, Puerto Rico, Paraguay, México, bastantes maestros que han estado presentes el día de hoy, vamos a agregar también esos datos. Sin embargo, ahora vayanlo llenando y pueden colocar otros o la ciudad en sí. Pero van a ser considerados absolutamente todos, tanto para la constancia que se da al finalizar todo el ciclo de webinars, como para el envío de los materiales también. Así que no se preocupen, por favor. Ahora sí, pasamos al sorteo, teachers, con todos los que están presentes. Y bien, tenemos en pantalla, me acompañan acá, por favor, los administradores, Leonardo, para poder otorgar las 3 becas. Los administradores están ahí, encienden las camaritas para saber que están con nosotros. Angelita Salazar, Mayra Ríos, David Cuadros, mi estimado David, estamos por ahí. Y tenemos la siguiente, mi Jessica, Jessica Carguavirca, Ricardo Núñez, bien. A ver, tenemos la data. ¿Cuántos datos han sido ingresados, estimado José? Si nos puedes mostrar, acá lo podemos ver donde dice concursantes. Son 1007, el total de concursantes 1007. 1007 la audiencia del día de hoy, querido Leonardo. Ha sido espectacular. Entonces, estos 1007 están entrando para realizar el siguiente sorteo. Va a ser de frente. La primera, acá están, como pueden ver, en la lista de concursantes, están los datos de los 1007 maestros que han llenado el formulario. El registro de asistencia, el exit ticket. ¿Sí? Ahí están, como pueden ver, se ven los números para que vean la transparencia. ¿Listo? Y ahora vamos a proceder, a ver, vamos, ¿quién va a dar la voz en este momento? Teacher David Cuadros, usted va a dar la voz para poder hacer el sorteo.
Hello, Mr. Mercado. Okay, so let's start, Miss. You ready?
Yes, we're ready.
Okay, please, go ahead.
Y la ganadora es Leonardo. Si pudieras dar lectura, por favor, si lo puedes ver ahí.
And the winner is Paxi Orna Yulisa Mercedes.
Eso, aplausos, teachers, admin team. Por favor, la maestra Yulisa Mercedes Paxi Orna tiene que escribir presente en el chat. Solamente le damos 15 segundos para que pueda escribir. Si es que no dice presente, bueno, ya, 20 segundos, no vamos a hacer mal. Si es que no dice presente, entonces pasamos a la siguiente. Por favor, son 3 becas, Mercedes, Paxi, Orna, Yulisa. A ver, vamos a ver si está presente. ¿Me ayudan, por favor, los admin? Revisando ahí en el chat de YouTube. ¿Sí está? Ya lo vi, dijo presente. Un aplauso para ella una vez más. Querida Yulisa Paxiorna, me parece que sí es miembro que ya está de hace un tiempo en nuestra comunidad. Se comunica con alguno de nosotros, con los administradores, por favor. Igual estamos guardando sus datos, nos vamos a comunicar con ella con los datos que están registrados en el exit ticket, así que congratulations. Y ahora sí pasamos al siguiente, nos ayuda mi Jessica Carguavilca, que le he quitado el exit ticket por no haberla escuchado. Tenía que haberlo compartido ella y yo volé. Querida Jessie, por favor. A tu voz, vamos. Está
Okay. Ready, let's start.
Uy, muy bien. Y tenemos acá la siguiente ganadora. Leo, ¿nos puedes ayudar a dar
The
lectura?
winner, the second winner tonight is Sonia Milagros Bedregal Rivera.
Oh, claps for her. Sonia Milagros Bedregal Rivera, are you there? Por favor, ya sabemos, tenemos solamente 15 segundos para colocar presente. Ya hay una beca que ha sido ya otorgada. A ver, a Sonia Milagros Bedregal Rivera. Sonia, ¿va por ahí? ¿No va por ahí? Tiene que decir presente y tenemos que ver el nombre también ahí. No lo veo todavía. ¿Me ayudan el admin team, por favor? Y para poder esperar, si no pasamos a la siguiente. Creo que no está. No la vemos. ¿Está por ahí? Sonia María Rojas. No, no es. Sonia Milagros Bedregal. Y parece que ya se fue. ¿Ya se fue? ¿No? No está. Entonces pasamos a ver si está. Pero no, tiene que decir, a ver, Sonia Milagros Pedregal Rivera. Sonia Milagros Pedregal Rivera. No está, ok. ¿Ya escribió? Sí, a ver si me ayudan. Acá, Eva Graciela Copa no es. No, no la veo, no está. No, definitivamente no está. La anterior sí, pero esta no está. No, she's not here. Next. Así que vamos para la siguiente, mi Gina. Así que al agua, se fue al agua. Mi Gina, su voz, por favor.
Okay, yeah. 1, 2, 3, go. Stop.
Oh, y ahí, ¿a quién tenemos?
And the winner is Ruth Bobadilla Anco.
Ruth Bobadilla Hanco. Tenemos unos minutitos, unos segunditos que demora un poquito en llegar el mensaje a YouTube, pero tiene que decir la maestra Ruth Bobadilla Hanco presente en el chat. Si dice presente en el chat, por favor. Los demás teachers, nadie debe escribir, solamente debe escribir presente la maestra ganadora, para nosotros saber si está o no está, porque si no está, pasamos al siguiente, porque queremos que gane alguien que está presente en este momento en el webinar, y esa es una prueba de que pues ha estado atento a toda la reunión y continúa con nosotros. A ver, Ruth Bobadilla Hanco, ¿está por ahí? No la vemos, no está. Damos, a ver, unos cuantos segunditos más. No, parece que no. Miss Ruth Bobadilla, no. Is not there. Nada. Y creo que no. Entonces vamos, no lo podemos ahora. Vamos entonces, una vez más, vamos, ahora sí, teacher Ricardo Núñez, a su voz.
Hello everyone, 1, 2, 3, go.
And the winner is Mr. Mercado.
Lucero Supo Choque Yanis. Oh no, Yanis Lucero Supo Choque.
Yeah, yes, right. Yanis Lucero Supo Choque. Rapidísimo. Yanis Lucero Supo Choque. Si está por ahí, por favor. Nuestra estimada Yanis Lucero Supo Choque. Tiene que escribir ahí. Presente, present, como guste, pero debe de estar ahí. Ok, Yanis Lucero supo choque, solamente esperamos unos 5 segunditos más, debe ser rapidísimo, porque si estamos atentos, se supone que estamos escuchando y ya. Y lo único que tenemos que hacer es escribir ahí. Sí, pues, teacher Ortega, oh, y ahí ya, sí, todas mujeres, no, pero ahora viene, ahora sí viene es que toca el teacher. A ver, vamos a ver. A la voz de, vamos, Angelita Salazar.
Okay, so 1, 2, 3, go. Stop.
And the winner is Elixenia Micaela Piri Cedeño.
Elixenia Micaela Piricedeño está por ahí. Man want to, dice, también los hombres quieren la beca. Ahorita va a salir. Vamos, Elixenia Micaela Piricedeño está por ahí. Veamos si está por ahí, le damos unos segunditos nada más para que pueda escribir presente. A ver. Querido Marcos, no te decepciones, ten fe. Ahorita salen varones. Vamos a ver si está por ahí, parece que no. A ver, ¿sí? ¿Respondió? Milagros Bedregal, no, es Elixenia Micaela Piti Cedeño. ¿Dónde está?
Yes.
¿Sí?
She
¿Ya
answered.
Entonces, ya está, perfecto. Y es nuestra segunda beca que se va. Y ahora sí vamos por la tercera y última beca. Miss Mayrita está por ahí. Si no está por ahí, no hay problema.
Yes, Miss.
Yes, ok.
Miss, I'm
A
here.
su voz entonces, Miss Mayra.
1, 2, 3, go.
The third and final winner is Fabiola Carla Guamán Bruno.
Y es miembro ya de mucho tiempo, creo, de nuestra comunidad. Nos alegra mucho y esperemos que esté presente. Si no está presente, va a ser una realidad. Vamos, Fabiola Carla Guamán Bruno. Estimada Fabiola, si estás ahí, debes escribir presente. A ver, vamos, Fabiola Carla Guamán Bruno. Estamos esperando y si está por ahí, entonces se lleva esta tercera beca completa. Ojo, teachers, es beca completa. Gracias a Mr. Mercado y a NISL Learning. Vamos a ver. ¿Y está? Parece que no. Parece que no está por ahí. Así que no nos va a quedar otra que pasar a la siguiente. No está. No, lo ven por ahí, no está, falta y no está. Creo que no está. Una pena. Entonces, mi Sulamita Chuden está por ahí para que por favor pueda dar el pase para el siguiente suertudo, porque los hombres están reclamando beca.
Okay. 1, 2, 3, go.
The winner is Saraí Dalila Guerra Crisóstomo.
Saraí Dalila Guerra Crisóstomo, por favor debe de escribir. Nos dicen aquí Milagros Bedregal dijo, sí, el problema es que dijo mucho después de que se le llamara, por eso es que se les da solamente unos segundos para que puedan escribir presente y nosotros poder constatar de que están atentos y activos al webinar. Si es que ingresan después de 2, 3, 4, 5 minutos, entonces quiere decir que probablemente no han estado y después han ingresado. Por eso es que lo hacemos en el momento y la maestra Bedregal, que ya lamentablemente está al agua porque están acá consultando, no lo hizo en el momento y esperamos buen rato para que pueda responder.
Mary, she answered.
Ya, en el caso de Saraí Dalila, es otro caso diferente, porque sí está ahí, ¿verdad? Ella sí Listo, perfecto, muchísimas gracias, sí está ahí, y ya tenemos entonces, recordamos los nombres de nuestras 3 ganadoras. Dear Leo, please. Can you
The
say
3
them?
winners are Julissa Mercedes Paxi Orda, Elixenia Micaela Petit Cedeño y Saraí Dalila Guerra Crisóstomo. Congratulations to all 3 of you. All the best.
Congratulations, dear girls. Bueno, hoy día no he tenido suerte los teachers, pero yo creo que las siguientes semanas, que seguramente por ahí vamos a tener también sorpresitas como esta, sí. Bien, muchísimas gracias de todo corazón por haber asistido a este webinar. De igual manera, también agradecer una vez más a Mr. Mercado y también a todo el equipo de maestros, administradores de la comunidad English Teachers in Perú, que hacen posible el desarrollo de este webinar gracias a la aceptación de ponentes con la trayectoria profesional de Mr. Mercado, por ejemplo, que ha estado con nosotros el día de hoy, quienes aceptan nuestra invitación de manera muy desinteresada, con el único propósito de compartir con toda la comunidad sus conocimientos, estrategias, y este grupo maravilloso de maestros que están en diferentes partes de nuestro queridísimo Perú, pues estamos todos involucrados en poder generar espacios que puedan hacer que se fortalezca nuestra práctica docente día a día en el área de inglés para que finalmente esto pueda llegar hasta nuestros queridos estudiantes. Y por ese lado, muchísimas gracias una vez más a todos ustedes, queridísimos, a todos los que nos han atendido en el webinar del día de hoy. Y esto acá que nos sale, si alguien por favor puede compartir la pantalla, José, para la galería. En este momento nos vamos a despedir todos, no me está saliendo aquí la opción. Para que pueda salir, no me sale la opción. José, si está por ahí, o Ángela, alguien que me pueda compartir la pantalla, porque no puedo salir de aquí. No me sale la opción de Zoom arribita para que podamos aperturar la galería, por favor. Para que se puedan ver todas las camaritas, vamos encendiendo las camaritas. Si me ayuda José. Y pueden compartir ustedes o hacer que yo deje de compartir la pantalla. Ahora sí, muchísimas gracias. No sé quién fue quien me ayudó. Gracias, se quedó bloqueado mi Zoom. Bien, Leonardo, estamos culminando con el webinar del día de hoy. Muchísimas gracias una vez más, porque yo sé que con estas 3 becas, maestros van a tener la posibilidad de poder participar en una capacitación con la calidad, y tengo que decirlo porque creo que el día de hoy lo han evidenciado todos los presentes, con la calidad de cursos que das, porque todos los cursos son desarrollados por ti mismo y realmente hay mucho que aprender. Gracias por estas becas que yo sé va a fortalecer la formación profesional de nuestros maestros que han estado presentes el día de hoy. Muchísimas gracias por todo lo compartido el día de hoy y esperamos que siempre puedas darnos un sí cuando se nos ocurra seguramente invitarte en los próximos webinars. Querido Leonardo, tal vez algún mensaje de despedida para todos los más de 1000 docentes que han estado presentes en este momento y todavía siguen muchos presentes en el webinar.
Bueno, no, agradecerles infinitamente por estar presentes el día de hoy. Ha sido un honor poder compartir esta tarde con ustedes y bueno, les deseo lo mejor, los mejores éxitos, y ya veo que vienen unas sesiones maravillosas también. Va a seguir esta gran serie de English Teachers in Peru, así que enjoy it as much as you can and keep on growing, keep on moving forward, okay? All the best to you in your professional development.
Thank you, dear Leo. Y por supuesto también se despide el día de hoy con ustedes el excelentísimo y el humilde y cariñoso grupo de administradores de nuestra comunidad English Teachers in Perú que han estado el día de hoy Con ustedes, Miss Ángela Salazar, Angelita linda, que ha estado a cargo de la ronda de preguntas, nuestro querido administrador, David Cuadros, quien está a cargo de los grupos de WhatsApp, en donde tenemos un montón también de miembros de la comunidad, a nuestro administrador Ricardo Núñez, muchísimas gracias por acompañarnos el día de hoy, nuestra querida Gina Evelyn Soclopuco, que ha estado el día de hoy con nosotros también en la ruta del webinar, mi queridísima Mayra Ríos Rengifo, administradora de la comunidad, nuestra querida Zulamita Chudé, muchas gracias querida Zuli por haber ingresado, siempre acompañando a toda la comunidad como administradora, a mi Jessica Carguavilca, que está aquí presente con nosotros, muchísimas gracias. Este es un trabajo conjunto, este es un trabajo en equipo, un trabajo colaborativo, el que llega a cada uno de ustedes con este producto que vienen a hacer esta serie de webinars, componentes de la talla de Mr. Mercado, y por supuesto detrás de toda la transmisión, ahí ayudándonos, apoyándonos y salvándonos, a Mr. José Ortega. Muchísimas gracias por toda la paciencia. Bye bye, dear English teachers in Peru and English teachers around the world. See you next week.